If you want to stay off camera for this, eat your lunch, deal with baby stuff, absolutely. Oopsie. Screen shared over to something that I didn't want to be on. How do I get back? Apologies. I didn't realize that that was going to happen. Let's see. Okay, we should be back. All right. And again, apologies. I know I'm a poor substitute for Olga, who is the master of teaching people how to talk to the media. But some of this is not necessarily just about talking to the media. We tweaked it for also just talking to the public in general. And so for some of you, this role that you're in is a little bit different than maybe something that you have done before. And so there's definitely a line between just being a regular community member who's attending conferences and meetings, and then when you actually have your CDA hat on and you're representing the Ag Commission or the CDA as an agency. And so just kind of how to navigate that, and also equipping you guys to be able to feel comfortable sharing who you are, what CDA is, how those two parts of you connect, so that when you are talking to your community and to the media, you're coming across as not only somebody who's pretty knowledgeable about what you're talking about, but also genuine. And that can be difficult if you're feeling nervous or you're not used to doing it. So that's what this training is about, is try to start to ease you guys into a comfort zone with all of this.
Bethany, I did want to interrupt before you proceed.
Yeah.
Since our meeting is a little bit unique and we do have the call to order and roll call and recognition of guests first in the agenda.
Okay.
Just want to get that officially going.
Perfect. Yep. Just tell me when you're ready for me again.
Okay. So Colleen, I think you're taking it away there.
Sure. It's Wednesday, December 13th, 2023, and I'd like to call today's meeting to order of the Ag Commission. Recognize any guests that we might have, and we'll re-recognize the guests after our training again. And I think with your permission, we'll move forward with our media training. Does that sound appropriate for you?
And if I may, I think since this is an optional training, we'll just want to do another updated roll call at the start of our 12:30 meeting.
Absolutely.
And probably just note that I do believe we have a quorum, but we will not be making any decisions during this 25-minute training.
Okay, do noted. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. So yes, no decisions or voting will be taking part during this portion of the meeting, and we will do a roll call and a quorum call at the end of the media training. So let's go ahead and move forward. Thank you, Bethany.
All right. Yes, no, thank you. And thanks for that reminder. So jumping in, basically how to tell your story. How do we discuss the narrative of CDA? There's definitely a lot of things that you can speak to as to data and statistics and all of that. But what really grabs people and what makes them feel connected to you and to CDA as a whole is our story and the people behind what we do and your story. So as representatives, obviously as CDA, you're talking in various communities. There's a lot of different hats that you guys wear. So we not only want you to highlight your experiences as a producer, as a rancher, whatever you are doing to represent the ag community, that's the lens that you're looking at whenever you're talking about stuff with CDA. So that's not something that we want you to hide or ever feel ashamed of. Like, that's exactly why you're on the Ag Commission and for regional assistant commissioners. Like, that's your selling point. That is exactly what your strong suits are. With different staff members, Ag Commission, regional assistant commissioners, Commissioner Greenberg, myself, we all have a little bit of a different role in how we're talking about CDA. So don't feel like, again, that you have to be the person who answers all of the questions all of the time. So this is kind of figuring out how to navigate when should you be the person that is actually answering the questions and when should you be diverting those questions to somebody who is the subject matter expert who can maybe discuss those details a little more closely. So that was the point also with our talking points document. was to put in as many of those contacts as possible, because we do have incredible staff at CDA, and they are more than willing, and they would love to talk with you about their program. And they're the ones who are working with it day in and day out. So we definitely want them to be able to be a fact checker and an accuracy checker for us whenever we're talking about things as well. So your job then is to provide that perspective of where you're coming from, and then how does that interact with CDA's programs? How does CDA's programs then perhaps interact with your community and with the people that you're talking about? And just, you're that connection point, right? So you're out in your community, you're that trusted messenger for people that you know, to be able to connect them to what it is that we're doing here at CDA. And then with that, you have the opportunity, as you're talking through your story, as you're talking about the different programs and maybe things that you have interacted with at CDA, you're using that voice to talk to decision makers. So not only decision makers at the top level, so policy, legislators, people at the very top levels, but decision makers in your own community. So county commissioners, people who are the stakeholders who are on boards and commissions, whether that's a local board or if that's actually, a CDA type of board. So we want you to be able to feel comfortable communicating up and down the chain both ways, so that, we're actually getting things done. That's one of the things that we want to make sure, that we're not just talking the talk, but we're showing, how are we putting what people are telling us into action. So with that, our main narrative at CDA is our mission and vision, which you can find on our website. But basically, it's that we're committed to advancing Colorado agriculture through these different goals that we have. So you don't have to say, WIGs. That doesn't usually mean anything to people outside of our agencies. But if you say our departmental goal, these are some of the things that we're committed to, which is they're lined out here. And that you can find again on our website, and that are on the talking points. So those are our top level ones. I would highly suggest just being really comfortable with those and being able to at least rattle those top 4 off when people ask you, what is CDA up to? What are they interested in? And then the ways that we accomplish those goals so we have all these different programs, again, a huge amount, which, the talking points is just a snippet of. But these are some of the main ones that we're working with right now that have gotten recent funding or are looking at getting recent funding, that are doing a lot more outreach and engagement into the next several months. So these are just, again, some of those top programs. By no means do they represent all of CDA, but these are kind of the ones that are getting a little bit more of the press right now. And we actually just put out a press release last week on the Ag Workforce Development Program that's soliciting for applications for businesses to be part of their internship program. We're looking at some, grant funding coming down the pipeline for Community Food Access Program, and some of these other ones. So these are just big ones to highlight. So the big thing, because we have so much going on and there is a lot of information, staying on message is difficult for me to do too. I can tend to get excited about certain things and kind of rabbit trail around. But when you're talking with people as you're going into meetings, especially ones where you might be asked some questions, just remembering what your main message is, to keep it brief, keep it simple. KISS, if you remember that one. We're always going to want to lead with our values, because that's what's really important to CDA. So our core values, again, are part of that talking point. So service, respect, partnerships, those kinds of things. We want to really make connections between our communities and what it is that makes CDA such a great agency to be a part of, and that is our values. And we share so many values with our agricultural communities. So keeping that as part of our message. Some of this is kind of should be common sense, but it bears repeating. There's a lot of negative narratives out there, and I don't have to say what they are. You guys know. So remembering to try to stay positive, not to get sucked into the negative or repeat negative things that you might have heard. Don't engage in partisanship. This one can be a really difficult one in this current day and age, but that's not our job. And that's not your job. So don't do it. And also the really big one that I like to hit on is just saying and being comfortable with, I don't know. but I will find out, or I can connect you with somebody who does know. So again, going back to your role is to be a connector in a lot of ways with your communities and with what CDA does. So there's always going to be somebody who can at least answer your question at CDA or get you to the right agency that can. So don't be afraid to say to somebody, I don't know, let me write down your name and contact information. I will, refer to my notes from my incredible talking points document, or I will talk to the commissioner or Bethany or Hollis or anybody else, and I will get back to you with the answer or with somebody who can answer your question. And then using pivot lines is the other thing to staying on your message. If you have something that you want to talk about and somebody's trying to ask you other things, we'll talk a little bit more about pivot lines in just a second, but don't be afraid to not necessarily answer their question. If it's not something that you feel comfortable answering, or you don't feel like you should be answering it, you can pivot a little bit. So with that, if this is an interview, if you are being contacted by the media and they are asking you some questions and it's not a conversation where it's a little more give and take and back and forth and a little more relaxed, try to pivot back to whatever your original message is. If they are, you're in an interview about local processing in your community, and they start to ask you questions that are outside of that, thinking about ways to kind of get back on message. And so these are some kind of things that can help you to remember to say it. So if you're saying these things, it's helping you to stay back on message. The bottom line is this, or we can't, oh, there's a typo in there. Forgive me, I'm really super embarrassed now. I don't like that. But we can't lose sight of the fact that, this is happening. Going back to whatever your critical point is, or asking them to keep in mind that this. So that's a gentle way to pivot back to, it's not maybe appropriate for me to talk about that, but the critical point is this. And then of course, there's lots of different ways that you tell your story, and I cannot tell you how to tell your story because you are a different person than everybody else who's in this call. And so whatever feels comfortable to you is going to be the best way to tell your story. But here's a few ways to kind of think through it. If you haven't told your story before, maybe you haven't been part of a panel, or you haven't, been in public speaking, and so it doesn't just roll off the tongue naturally. Thinking through this kind of three-tiered problem, solution, urgency can help you when you're going into these more formal situations like conferences, events, or presentations, is to think about what it is that you're talking about that is the problem or the main topic. So whether these are some examples that we put in here, if we're talking about lack of access to land or capital for transitioning your farm or ranch, for example, if that's a topic that is going to be talked about, thinking through ahead of time, what is the solution to that CDA has? Is there something that CDA is already working on? How is it going to directly address the problem that you're identifying? And then you can also talk through, this would be our wish list. Like, these are things that we would love to see. And that's a really great way to kind of generate some good conversation with people as well, so that it's not just how are you going to solve the problem, but how are we going to solve the problem? What are ideas that we can all bring to the table? And then thinking through, why is this problem? Why is this part of your story so urgent? Why is it so important to bring this part of your story forward at this time? So, why are we acting on it now? Maybe the problem has been there for a really long time. I mean, lack of land access, problems with financing, those things have been around for a really long time. So why is it something that we should talk about right now? Why is it something that maybe you feel passionately about, or that connects to your story in a way that makes it feel urgent to you? And I'm going to definitely leave some time for questions. But since I can't really see people very well, I'm just going to preface this with, if you have questions on any of the stuff that we're talking about, if you'll just pin it for now, then I'm definitely going to bring it back to questions, but I want to make sure we kind of get through the main points. So thinking through that, the problem, the solution, and the urgency to solve it, your story and the story of CDA, how do those kind of connect to each other? So talking through a challenge that maybe you faced. There's definitely power in giving people an opportunity to see you as a person who has also struggled or has also faced a challenge. So thinking about the choices that you have had to make in your own operations, in your own life, with your own families, and being able to make that connection again with people, especially if it's somebody who's very upset about something, a challenge that they're facing, that's definitely something that can give you some compassion and empathy, is sharing a little bit and being a little bit vulnerable about the things that you have gone through. And then maybe talking about the outcome of what are the solutions or things that you or your family or your operation went through in order to come out to the other side. And then again, with a conversation, or even if you're a panelist or you're talking to a media person, you know, again, bringing it back to how can we solve this together, that it's not just, usually all of the things that we're dealing with in agriculture are multifaceted, and there's no way that CDA is going to solve it on its own. And so how are different partnerships that we're involved with, how are the agencies that we work with, how are we solving this together? What are ideas that your community might have, or the person that you're talking to might have, to work through it? So the thing with this too is if you're at a conference or a meeting and you get cornered and somebody's asking you a lot of really tough questions, it's helpful to think through this is not on you to solve everybody's problems. That's not going to happen. So how can we all be part of this solution together? And if you kind of give yourself that grace to step back and say, it's not my responsibility to solve every single problem that we have, but I'm interested in knowing how can we work through this to solve it together. And then thinking through again, how do you communicate why it's so important? If somebody is maybe like, well, I don't really feel like what you feel like is important. Talking through why that urgency is there, for you specifically. And again, that kind of goes back to your story. You know, why is something that you're passionate about coming up for you right now? Is it something that you're dealing with in your own operation or your own family? And so it feels urgent to you, and that's why you want to bring it up for others to talk about. And then finally, giving a specific call to action is always helpful. So we don't want to just leave it at the responsibility is always on CDA or it's always on you. Again, it's how can we as a community, or what are things that we as CDA need to know about in order to act on it? So we definitely love to discuss problems, and we can get kind of rabbit trailed into talking about things so much that we don't think about, okay, what do we actually need to do to accomplish this? So having that as part of the conversation can also be helpful and help people to feel like you're going to do something about it. That's something that frequently gets brought up as well, is frustration that all we ever do is talk about things, right? But what are things that we can do together that are action items? Can they talk to somebody else? Is there a bill or something that we can start working on? You know, things like that. Just kind of spitballing off the top of my head right now with that. And then talking about what you want to talk about, especially if it's an interview and not a conversation. So again, if you're talking with somebody from your local newspaper, don't get pulled into things that maybe they want to discuss all the time. Continue to think about what it is that you want to talk about. What is your main point that you want to make over and over and really reinforce with people? And so you can do that in a couple of different ways. This is a nice little story pyramid that Olga made that maybe at some point we can kind of work through at another time, but kind of practicing through, what are the 2 or 3 main points if you have a message that you want to do? Can you use a statistic that you can just pull out of your pocket that you always know, that you have checked and verified is accurate, that with this particular topic that you're talking about is a statistic that really makes your point? Is there a story that you have, maybe your own story, maybe a story that you could share from someone else if they're okay with it, that illustrates whatever message that you're talking about? And then again, what is the solution that we're going to offer? So if we're dealing with X number of people who are struggling to raise capital for their farms in Colorado, and this is something that you have personally experienced in your life, statistic, story, the solution might be, at CDA, we are working with the Future Agricultural Loans Program so that people who are struggling can have access to capital that they might not have had before. So that's just kind of a little sandwich. And then again, thinking back to pivoting if they try to get you off topic. But the idea is that you in an interview should be in control of the conversation. Don't feel like you have to answer every single question that they're throwing at you. And then just talking to people in public and just in general, which can be difficult, especially if you've been in a community for a long time and people know you really, really, really well. But if you're thinking about as you're at meetings in your community, especially if you're talking to reporters, these are some don'ts to do and to think about. I don't think that most of you are going to have a problem with lying. I really just don't feel like it's an issue with anyone, but not even like a white lie. Don't answer a question you don't know the answer to. So it's better to say you don't know, and again, try to refer them to somebody who does know than to try to come up with an answer on your own that might not be accurate and might cause more problems than it's worth. Definitely, we don't want to challenge, attack, or insult anybody. That can be difficult if we're in a passionate mood or if we're talking about something that is really close to our hearts. Making jokes is a hard one. Sometimes jokes don't come across the way that we hope they would, especially if we're in like virtual environments. And I know I'm guilty of that as well. So maybe just if you know somebody super, super well, and you're wanting to joke with them, just kind of rein in your instincts if you're in public, and think about, you know, the fact that something that might be funny to you or a joke to you may not come across very well. So it's better to just say things straight. Don't criticize people on your team, which your team right now is CDA. So there's definitely going to be people who want to get you to badmouth whatever it is that we're doing. You don't have to say false things in our praise, but definitely we want to be a team that's working together, and that's really difficult if people are getting slammed behind their back. So just, you know, again, think about the way that you want to be treated and remember that we're all in this together and we're trying to do our best. And so you can always have private conversations with anyone on staff if you feel like you really want to talk with them about it. And then finally, again, don't try to cover anything up. We don't really have anything to hide anyway, but if you feel like you have something to hide, talk to me or Kate or someone else about it if you're concerned about that aspect. But in general, open, honest, transparent, and tactful is the words that I would ask you in this situation to think about. And then I'm just going to kind of skip through this so we can get to any questions really quickly. But again, the big one that I want to pull out from talking with media, and again, this is probably more going to be your local media than necessarily a big publication, but assume that you're always on the record. Even if they say you're not on the record, you're probably still on the record. So just think about all of those don'ts again and assume that you're on the record. You can practice beforehand. If you're going to do an interview and you're nervous about how it might sound, maybe it's a radio interview or a TV interview, you can practice with your kids, practice with your spouse, make them sit down, get your dog to sit there. If you're out with the cows are great listeners. They don't judge. And so you can practice with them, and you can prepare to answer a question that maybe you don't want to be asked. And that one's a really good one. You can either write it down or have like your spouse or a child or someone or a close friend ask you that question so that you're prepared for that little onslaught of adrenaline that usually getting asked something stressful will give you. And you can practice how does that feel to work through a difficult question that you might get asked. And that way you can kind of also practice maybe some breathing. Pausing is good. I know I'm talking a little fast right now, but you don't have to get out what you want to say as quickly as you maybe think you should. So always, you know, take a moment to pause, think through what you want to say, and then you can say it and people can wait, and that's fine. So the fun fact at the bottom is that the research is telling us that content is less than 10% of the presentation. People are mostly not listening to what you're saying. They're watching your voice and they're watching how you're saying it. And so they're thinking through like, do I like this person? Do they feel trustworthy? Is the way that they're saying this making me feel like they know what they're talking about? And that's why, you know, sometimes we can get conned really easily by people because we're like, well, they're really nice and they're good looking. And so they must be saying things that are true. So just practice so that you can let your personality shine through the parts of it that are, you know, appropriate to let out. And just feel the comfort level that you can have with being in a conversation, and let that translate into an interview. It's a lot of stuff to remember, I know. So I will share this out with you guys so you can think about it as well. If a reporter calls, just as an FYI, again, for us, let me know in this case. Olga will be back in mid-January, but try to find out who they are, what they work for, what they want to talk about, and what their deadline is, and then let us know, and then we can help you if you need any help. This is a good point that Olga makes is, you know, make sure that you're not hungry when you're going to call them back. Make sure that you're in a good place so you're well rested, you're not in a stressful situation. And then you can talk to the reporter or whoever wants to talk to you in a way that you are in a comfortable zone. All right. So a few things, you know, that I'm just going to kind of go through really quick. When you're in the interview, you can try to record it to make sure that it says what you know that you said. Again, try to get to know them if you can beforehand. If you're a local community member who's, you know, that's their local journalist person, you might already know them, but you know, you can try to get to know them a little bit beforehand and know a little bit more of what it is that they want, what type of story are they trying to tell, and think about the ways that you can help them with that. All right, so we're not going to practice, but I am going to ask if anybody has any questions on any of that. Elena.
Yeah, so I have been really lucky that recently I have had a couple interviews, but they've all been on the farm, not as CDA. And so my question is like, is that, and I did run them by Jordan just to let him know that I did these, you know, like interviews through the Quivira Coalition mostly. And so I was just wondering, like, do I need to like be like, and I am on the Ag Commission? Do I leave that out? Like, I guess I just want to know what would be, like, if it's farm related, not related to anything political or any sort of CDA related, how would I best do
I think
that?
more communication is always more helpful than less. Like, I know you guys are very busy, but like letting Jordan know, or myself or Kate, or just somebody like, hey, I had this person on my ranch, just in case. And if you know, you're not talking as part of CDA, you can make that clear to them. Like, I am on the Ag Commission, but in this capacity, I am acting in a private producer, and just really set those boundaries of, because they can always do research on you, right? And like find out your biography and see what your affiliations are. And so being very clear. And again, that's kind of the thing with, if you feel like it might be at all sketchy, or they might take what you're saying out of context, you know, recording it yourself or asking someone else to be present. So that I would generally not speak to anybody that you feel like is going to be sketchy or is not going to be trustworthy, and being able to line out. But I think it's always great to be able to discuss with them, like, look, I wear a lot of hats, right? And in this one, I'm talking to you as the Quivira Coalition only, and just really be very clear about that.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, I did run them by, I did send a message to Jordan just to let him know, but I just didn't know like if I should just like not say anything, or if I just say I am on the Ag Commission, but this is just my perspective as a producer. Would that be probably the best way to
I think that would be
that?
Yeah, being transparent is good, and being able to just
Okay.
be very clear on your parameters with what you're talking about.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. And yeah, I appreciate that.
Sure.
Bethany, this is Simon.
Yes.
Thank you for all that information. It's helpful. Okay, so it's great that you can take the time to kind of head us in the right direction when can be. So, thank you. And
Yeah,
the
it's okay.
information will become available for us.
Yes,
Okay.
I'll send this to you guys.
All right. Thank you.
Anybody else? I see Joe has something in the chat. Yes.
I think I got in on the tail end of your last meeting here, so this is George. I don't know if you can see me.
Oh, just no, but if you want to go ahead, that's totally fine.
Oh, I think I must have tagged in on your.
Oh, we're just doing a really quick media training. It's the same one that Olga did with you and Joe a few months ago. Just for the Ag Commission so that they're ready. But yes, Joe, I think you're right. You can always ask for questions so you can prepare ahead of time. And I kind of skipped through that very quickly on one of the slides, but if that helps you to prepare, always feel comfortable asking for what you need to make sure that you can answer somebody correctly and accurately.
Bethany, I have a question. We try and do our best, obviously, and do our due diligence in these situations. But let's say there's an instance where maybe we're misinterpreted, or they print, a perspective that we didn't want to reflect in our language. Maybe we didn't communicate right. What would be the recourse on that? Does it now kind of escalate into another kind of a situation, or how do we obtain the damage?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because it's usually circumstantial, right? It depends on what the topic is and what's happening. So always let Kate and Jordan and myself in acting capacity, and when Olga is back, her know about that. And then we'll do our best to kind of triangulate. Should we say anything? Sometimes you don't want to escalate it by a response, and sometimes it's best to it just depends on the situation.
Right.
So always just, first of all, if it's anything that you notice that's come out that's going to be problematic, alert our team as soon as possible so we can help you through that.
Right. Thanks.
Yeah, I think we're about at time. So I know you guys have another packed agenda. So thank you so much for your time. Today, I just felt like it was really important to set you guys in the right direction, as Simon said, and get you set up for meetings and conferences and all of that. If you have any other questions or any other concerns, please contact me. You guys all have my phone number and my email, and I am happy to talk with you at any time to get you prepared, especially if you're a panelist or you have an interview. Just let me know, and I'm very happy to help. So I know you guys are going to do great. You're great people, and you have wonderful stories, and we just want you to feel comfortable telling them. So.
Thank you.
Bethany, thank you so much. It's training that we all can benefit from. So appreciate the time that you put into it and the fact that you're going to share that with us as well. Harrison, go ahead, please.
This is, I can send you more information, but next month is the Western Colorado Horticulture Society conference, and I'm the current president, and I'll be doing opening remarks at our banquet. And likely we'll mention the Ag Commission because I took Brant's place, and Brant just passed, and Brant was an active member of the Hort Society as well. So I'm not going to say anything about CDA, but I'll make note of just sort of in honor of, just so you guys have a heads up.
Thank you, Harrison. And I hope that your cat will be attending as well, because she's super cute.
Cats, babies, dogs, the whole entourage.
Great. Again, thank you, Bethany, for your time and your energy put forth to that presentation. And I think, we've all done it never hurts to review and to rethink those kind of things. So thanks so much. I think with that, we'll move forward. I know, Ariana, David says he's having trouble signing on. You having any luck with that?
I text him and I haven't heard back. And I'm going to send a chat to Melissa and Bethany to enlist their help and see if they can troubleshoot it.
Okay. He said something about it's not working through Google. So you can send it another way. Okay. So I think we'll go ahead and call this portion of the meeting together. And I do believe we have a quorum to start the meeting. And I'd like to start by recognizing any guests that are on the line with us. I know when we first started a half an hour ago, Harrison, you had a special guest on your lap, but you have a different one now. So
my other special guest is eating lunch, so I will
okay.
At a convenient point, I'll go collect them.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. We don't want to miss out on that. So there, we're getting David on, I think, through the phone. Right here. Are there any other guests that we need to recognize online, Ariana?
It doesn't look like it. We have some CDA staff, and we have, I think that's about it. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. So for those of you who are just joining, we just had a wonderful media training presented by Bethany Howell. And I know we're going to take all of her tips and put them to use in the next year. So thank you again for that wonderful training. I'd like to start by asking for a approval of today's meeting agenda. Asking for a motion.
I move to accept the meeting agenda. Madam Chair, this is David.
Thank you, David. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Roberto, for the second. Any discussion? Any corrections or additions to the agenda? All those in favor of approval of the agenda for today, please say aye or thumbs up on the screen, please.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passed. We're going to move on now. Hopefully you've all had a chance to look at the November meeting minutes. And I would entertain a motion for approval of the November meeting minutes.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the November meeting minutes.
Thank you, Harrison. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Simon. Any corrections or discussions on November's meeting minutes? Okay, hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of accepting November's meeting minutes, please say aye or thumbs up.
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. We are now at the point now where we open the floor for open public comment for non-agenda items. And the comments will be limited to 3 minutes per individual if we have those comments. Hey, hearing none, we'll move forward with Commissioner Greenberg's report.
Great. Thank you, Chair Pepler, so much for the intro. And Bethany, thank you, if you're still on, for doing the comms training. That was, it's always helpful for a refresher, no matter how many times we engage with the public or with the media. So I'll try not to be redundant to the updates Hollis will give. Just want to give some exciting updates on new team members and talk a little bit about recent events and then what's on the horizon, especially as this is our last commission meeting before the new year. So I did have first on my list to welcome Ezra Top, who will be joining us, the newest member of the Ag Commission, about a week old or so. Always love to see our expanding Ag Commission family. In addition to that, 2 really exciting new additions to our team and to our senior team at CDA. As you all know, we have been on the hunt for a new division director for markets after Tom Lepetsky's retirement in September. And I'm very pleased to announce that our own Amanda Laban is our new markets division director at CDA. So you all probably saw that announcement go out, but really excited to have Amanda on board in this role. She's been working with CDA in a new position that we created last year when we restructured markets. So she's been overseeing land access, our community, our loan fund, community food access program. She comes to CDA with a great depth of background in food systems work, in farming herself, as well as just working with family farmers across Colorado and the West on all sorts of issues that relate to what markets is responsible for. So I know Amanda is on with us today, but just want to say congratulations in front of our Ag Commission and look forward to those of you who don't yet know Amanda to getting to know her as she builds out all the work that markets is doing. So welcome, Amanda. Also excited to announce, you all probably saw, but we have hired for our CDA's first ever Ag Water Advisor position, and Robert Sakata is going to be joining our team. I'm pretty sure you all know Robert. He is referred to as many names. Just in the last week, I've heard him called the Godfather of Water. I've heard him called the Peyton Manning of water, and various other titles. But I think what those get at is just his stature in the ag community and in the water community. And he will start January 2nd officially. But if you know Robert, which I think you do, he has already hit the ground running. He's actually in Las Vegas right now with the Colorado River Water Users Association conference, not in an official CDA capacity, but I'm already getting notes that he's working up plenty of ideas for what this role will be. And it's a brand new role. So couldn't imagine a better person to go figure out what the state needs and how to represent CDA specifically on matters of water. I know he will want to meet each of you in this new capacity. So I'm hoping that he'll be able to join us in person in January. We'll work out that schedule as we get closer to the new year. But you will be getting to spend time with Robert, both, of course, at Winter Commission meetings, but out in the field as well. So lots of other, oh yeah, Harrison, go ahead.
I just want to, can't believe we weren't asked about this. I would have fought tooth and nail to keep Robert out of the department. He's what a terrible. Sorry, I'm going directly against Bethany's advice about not making jokes. Sorry, Bethany. I'm gonna lower my hand.
Knowing you, Harrison, I know that that's you singing praises of someone. So
I can't believe you snagged him. What a get. Swipe right.
Absolutely. That's spot on. Thanks for the chat, Bethany. Good save there. All right. So moving on. Just want to give a shout out to some of our teams on the grants front. We're moving forward on agrivoltaics as you all approved those grants. We're doing a formal, more public announcement just to make sure the public knows what we're doing on agrivoltaic research investment. The community food access team with Mickey and Markets, they're moving through a massive response to our first round of community food access grants. So more to come likely in our January meeting, but we'll keep you updated. And then we also, our Acre 3 team, Sam Anderson and Kristen, were successful in bringing in $300,000 in federal money for REAP technical assistance, the Renewable Energy Assistance Program. So we're hiring a position for that right now. So we're going to be able to help more producers access those federal dollars on renewables. And Hollis, if I missed anything, please fill in your update. Recent events, just more shout outs here. We had the first ever turkey pardon held at the governor's mansion around Thanksgiving. And I have to say, this was a very sweet event. We worked with farmers out in Hayden Farm Fresh, and they were just fantastic. They saved these birds and protected them and kept them alive for about a month before the event. And the birds are living out their natural life after the event. But it was really a great time to elevate Colorado Ag. Community Ag Alliance out in Routt County was a big part of it. We had most of the state FFA officers and some of our county grand champs on the turkey showing as well. And I have to give a shout out to Bethany, who was a champion turkey shower in her earlier days. So she was a great asset to putting on the event, but looking forward to probably having this be an annual thing. On a more serious note, we had our joint budget committee last week, our hearing, which Jordan will fill you in on, but just a massive lift for our team to get to where we are in the budget process. Really a huge team effort. I can't say that enough. We've got folks across each division who work on shaping our budget almost in just a year-round cycle. Once we, start advocating for this budget, we're starting to plan for the next budget. So really the work never ends, but he'll fill you in on details there. We also played a big role in the food summit this past week. I know there's a lot of conversation out there about the food summit's value across the state, given that's in Denver. But there were nearly 700 folks registered this year all across the state. We had a great showing from Southwest Colorado, from all corners of the state. And we were, through our Next Gen Scholarship Program, which we created last year at CDA, we were actually able to support 63 youth leaders from all across Colorado at the Food Summit. And 13 of those leaders actually helped organize the summit. So that's really, playing out in terms of how we wanted that program to make an impact on young people, being able to show up, participate, have a seat at the table, and really shape what our discussion and conversations look like on ag across the state. And I saw Roberto there, I know many of you were keeping tabs on it, and Hollis and our team just played a really big hand in getting that off the ground this year. So kudos there. Last week, we also wrapped up our Colorado River Drought Task Force. I saw Joe there. I think Joe was also at the Food Summit. So just another point to CDA, we're just showing up everywhere we can, but strategically. And I think that plays in big time to how Bethany is helping us think about strategic and community engagement around the state. Excuse me. So that was our last Drought Task Force meeting last week. So this Friday, our facilitators will be finalizing the recommendations to the legislature. I will forward that on to you all so you can see kind of what we put forward as a task force, what was tabled. But I think the bottom line is a lot of great work went into this task force, a lot of really important work. Those items that are being put forward as recommendations to the legislature, we may or may not see as bills this session. And in addition, those items that we did not vote to move forward as recommendations, we may or may not see as bills this session. So while our work as a task force is done, our work as a department will continue on as normal to see what kind of bills come up this legislative session with regards to water writ large across the state. And obviously we'll be sending Robert in to the legislature and anywhere we need to help us work on that as well. And then last two items for recent events. We are, as you know, really trying to build out our just emergency preparedness writ large at CDA. Last week or the week before, Dan Frazen, our emergency coordinator, helped facilitate a foodborne illness training. This is not CDA's lead. We're not a lead on any foodborne illness outbreak, but we are an essential partner in that response. And so we had a really great 2-day training with all sorts of folks, state, county, federal, who will be inherent to a response should we have to deal with one. And then we are also moving forward conversations and coordination around PFAS, the quote unquote forever chemicals that are, in firefighting foam. They're in so many products. They're in contact lenses. They're all over the place, but they also turn up in water and soil. So we want to make sure we're coordinated with Department of Public Health and Environment. We're coordinating with EPA. We want to make sure we're protecting ag, we're protecting consumers, we're protecting the environment, but that we're also managing liability as this progresses. So I'll be talking more about PFAS as we go forward. I just want you all to know that we have inserted ourselves in this topic because it impacts ag in a big way. And we need to have interagency coordination at the state, local, and federal levels, and we're helping push that forward. So I'll leave that there. It's pretty vague, but that's where we're at on that topic. And then lastly, just yesterday, we held our annual CARE Awards, our Employee Recognition Awards, and it was a fantastic event. Just again, so much good work going on. We had, I think, 68 nominations come in for various categories, including folks who are really leading by example with our core values. So just from a kind of CDA culture standpoint, I feel like we are continuing to make really meaningful investments in our people, in our culture, in how we do business. And I hope that shows up with how you experience CDA from a customer standpoint, in addition to your commissioner roles. But of course, we are always open to your feedback with the many hats that you wear. Lastly, I just kind of want to tee up what's on the horizon. We are going to be posting, we've got more jobs to be posting that you'll see popping up. So those 2 climate smart marketing specialists are on the horizon. 2 additional regional assistant commissioner postings, Nick, are on the horizon. Your comments on Plains REC have not gone unnoticed. So we'll be leaning on you all to help us get more great producers in those seats. I will be hosting a panel at the Colorado Water Congress this winter. So again, kind of looking at conference season, we're really diving in there. And I'll hit pause because I see Harrison, your hand up. Go on, go ahead.
You can finish that thought. It was about something you said 45 seconds ago. So when you
okay, I just have 2 more points and then I'll go back to you. In addition to all the conferences this year, we are still working on pinning down our first ever tribal consultations with both Ute Mountain Ute Tribe and Southern Ute. So we will keep you apprised as of that. And of course, Simon will very much be in touch with you on kind of where we're going on those dates and our game plan there. But my objective is to A, just continue to strengthen our relationship with the tribes, B, have a discussion about a tribal liaison for CDA, and just to discuss how our programs might do a better job of working with the tribes and with Indigenous farmers and ranchers. So we'll be fleshing out the agenda here soon, but I certainly welcome any input or feedback on that front. And then lastly, my laundry list of things. Last week, I was appointed by Secretary Vilsack to serve on the Urban Agriculture and Innovative Production Federal Advisory Committee. So that will be announced sometime soon. That appointment starts January 8th, and it's a 3-year term. So just know that I will now be a conduit to the secretary on those matters. It's a pretty broad sort of terms for that board, but we'll probably be leaning on you all over the next few years on what we want to advise the USDA and the secretary on when it comes to urban ag and innovative production writ large. So I will pause there and happy to answer questions. And Harrison, if you still got one, happy to start with you.
Sure. First question was going back to the climate smart marketing specialists. Do you have a game plan, or maybe this is a Hollis question? What's the game plan for them onboarding with producers and getting to know producers and the breadth of product that fall under the climate smart, fall under the STAR program and the other various ways that they may be marketing for producers?
Yeah, sure. Happy to help, Harrison. We're still fine tuning the position descriptions, but conceptually, we have 2 positions, right? We have one that's kind of market focused or manufacturing industry focused, as well as consumer awareness. So they're thinking kind of on the manufacturing side, and then the other one is going to be kind of producer focused. And how do we help producers make those business connections? How do we help producers develop marketing plan, marketing materials for their commodity? And then the 2 positions, so one's kind of manufacturing focused, one's producer focused. They then also help through B2B connections as we start to forge those relationships on both sides and bring them together. The idea is once we have them in place, we're going to develop, we're still working on a feasibility plan that we contracted for, getting the final recommendations on how we can help expand marketing materials on Climate Smart. Well, once we get them on board, we're going to design a strategic plan on that initiative. And then really ultimately the goal is then to begin to beta test this through engagement with companies, businesses interested in doing climate smart marketing and committing to it, and working with them on beta testing on how we begin to make those connections again between producer and manufacturer, as well as supporting both of them. So that is essentially the plan.
The one thing in what you were just saying, Hollis, that makes me think of that I've been wildly impressed with how the Fair Food Program is tackling marketing for participants of that program. It's shockingly efficient with major, at least for produce, major buyers across the country, large volumes. It may be worth looking at a couple pages from their playbook and also the way they structure it with coming up with terms like priority buying and things like that. So anyways, just a note after hearing you speak. And then the other thing I had, which is sort of a wistful, forgettable idea, is with so many new staff, so many important faces that you guys are hiring from the ag community, it really seems like it may be time for a CDA roadshow. Get the mystery van back together and come out. It's maybe it's just December talking, but it feels like producers would enjoy showing up to something like that.
Great suggestions. And with Climate Smart, yeah, we know we're building a brand new program from scratch, but we know we're not building from scratch, and looking for those resources like you just suggested on helping, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel, or we can advance at a more rapid pace in setting up the program. Love it. love it, absolutely. And I like your idea of roadshow as well.
Yeah, on the road show, I think Robert already bought a minibus actually, so we'll just be jumping on with him.
Okay, good. Make sure it's tie-dye. Sorry, no joke.
Great. Any other questions or comments for me? All right. Thanks, everybody.
Congratulations on your appointment, Kate.
Thanks, David.
Yeah, Kate,
Yeah.
that's wonderful news, and congratulations to Amanda and Robert. And I like the roadshow idea, especially if you've got a minivan ready to go. Sounds good. Moving forward, legislative and budget updates. Jordan?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. This will be a fairly quick update. As Commissioner mentioned, last week we did have our joint budget committee hearing, which went well. So next up in that budgeting process, we'll have some more written questions that we have to answer for the committee prior to the start of legislative session. And then sometime in February, they'll actually vote on whether or not to include our specific budget requests within the the budget bill for the year. And so between kind of now and February, it'll be a little bit quiet on the budget front. And then once February hits, we'll be furiously lobbying the JBC right ahead of that hearing. Again, just want to thank all of our staff. Every one of our division directors played a role in putting this budget together this year. All of you played a role in the budget this year. We really took to heart a lot of the comments that we heard from all of you throughout the year and tried to incorporate those into our budget and legislative requests. So I hope that you recognize that and see those reflected in what we're putting forward this year. Session does start next month. At last meeting, I mentioned as we start getting official kind of drafts of bills, I'll start sharing those with all of you so that you can take a look at those and get some feedback. Due to the special session last month, bill drafters are still a bit behind. And so we're still waiting on drafts for many of CDA agenda bills. And so again, once we get those, we'll share those out with all of you. Other than that, just wish everybody happy holidays and have a good rest of your meeting.
Thank you, Jordan. Any questions for Jordan? Great, thank you. Moving on, operations update, Hollis.
Thanks, Colleen, and hi, everybody. I'll keep mine brief as well. I think that Kate did an excellent job updating everyone on top priority operational efforts that we're doing here, including the several hiring of our positions. So I won't go into that. I'll just keep it more somewhat operational, somewhat programmatic here in my brief updates. First thing, just to let you know, and one thing we are doing in an operational change with Amanda Lavin coming in, overseeing the markets division. Prior to Tom leaving, we did move the fruit and vegetable inspection unit program that was under markets as an interim over to the inspection and consumer services division, head by Mark Gallegos. Mark has extensive experience working with people in the San Luis Valley, doing inspections, understanding how we do the fruit and vegetable inspections and the gap audits. So that was an interim move we did while we were looking for the replacement. And it has worked out really well, and rebalancing kind of the workloads and just also putting programs in like divisions. We've decided to make that move permanent. So fruit and vegetable inspection program, and everyone is on board. Everyone really appreciates and likes the idea, including their fruit and veg staff. So they'll be part of the inspection and consumer services division. And they were part of ICS many years ago before my time. And so this seems to be like a good operational change. And fruit and veg will continue to get the support they need from Broomfield through Mark and the ICS division. Colorado Proud has wrapped up. They do annual surveys of both consumers and its members on various marketing issues, concerns, interests. And they have received the data. The survey is closed. They're aggregating that data and be reviewing that data. They're going to use that data to again develop a multi-year strategic plan, as well as kind of key initiatives that they want to tackle in this year. So once they get that data survey results kind of aggregated and reviewed and analyzed, we'll be happy to share those results with you as well. They're always really interesting to share with the Ag Commission from what our Colorado Proud members as well as consumers are feeling about Colorado Proud. We continue to have good production, good progress on our wild horse project in holding stakeholder meetings or our work group meetings. I think we are currently right now in our third as we speak right now. The work group head by Wayne East in our animals division. It's done a really great job at these. We had one in Glenwood Springs. We had the second one here in Broomfield a couple weeks ago, and then they're having the third one right now in Canyon City. So we continue to make progress towards that project. And the other thing I would share really quickly here is coming up on January 24th is our SMART Act hearing, where we go in front of the legislative committee and discuss essentially kind of what CDA is doing regarding kind of making state measurements accountable, responsive, and transparent. So that's the acronym for SMART. Really what we do is we present every year, every agency does, and we really kind of go over what our mission, our vision statements is, our organizationals, our org chart, wildly important goals, our performance managements, budgets, kind of legislative and regulatory agendas, the work we do in EDI, all the work we're doing in stimulus. So we're currently right now going to begin to focus and turn our attention to the SMART Act hearing and presenting that to the legislatures on kind of the work we're doing and how measurable it is impacting the programs that we are implementing. So we'll keep you updated on that. Finally, just for an awareness for the Ag Commissioners, want to let you know that we have had our measurement standards programs or our weights and measures where we go out and test scales and tag scales is been selected. We have the distinct honor of being selected by the state auditor for what they call a discretionary audit. So this is a performance audit, not a financial audit. So they're going to be looking at how well are we performing the statutory requirements of that program. And they'll be working with Mark Gallegos and his team that's also in the ICS program. This is again discretionary. They just wanted to select a program and they thought weights and measures would be a good one to review. So we're working with them. The process takes a while, anywhere from a year to year and a half, depending on how far you want to see out guys implementing their recommendations. But we have just started that connections and that process now. It is not open. It is not open to the public. It is not public records per se until it's finalized when they take it to the Legislative Audit Committee, which would be sometime in October. And so we won't be talking too much about it here in this public meeting, but it is common knowledge or public knowledge that we are having a discretionary performance audit on our weights and measure program. So we thought we'd let you know today as well, just for your awareness. And that is all the updates I have for today.
Thank you, Hollis. Are there any questions or comments for Hollis today?
I have one question, Hollis. I'm very curious about the SMART Ag hearing presentation and maybe just some comments on reflecting around that in the past, and if that is something just to disclose what we're doing and how we're measuring and tracking our impact, or is it really to kind of pave the way for good collaborative support for some of our policy and budgetary requests moving forward?
I mean, the easy answer on that one, thank you, Roberta, for that question. It's really both, right? It is required of all 8 state agencies to present a SMART Act and represent on very specific things on how we are being measured in our performance. So we use that to tell the story of what we're doing, but we also tell the story to the legislatures also of where we're going, right? And we talk about the legislative and the regulatory agendas that we're putting forward.
Thank you. Any others for Hollis? Wonderful. We'll move on. And Bethany, outreach opportunities.
And Bethany, you're still on mute, if you can hear us. Perhaps we can loop back, Colleen.
I was going to say, let's loop back to Bethany and let's move forward with brands update and recognition of service. Kate, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Thanks, Colleen. So we have Chris Whitney on today per commission request from, I think, a meeting or two ago, just about how things are going over in brands. I believe, if I'm recalling correctly, there was just a sense of, hey, we've got a brand board, but we don't cross over with the Ag Commission very much. So ask Chris to come on just for a kind of a brief overview of what's happening in brands. But then, of course, you know, Chris is also retiring at the end of the month. And so just wanted a chance for you all to be together just to recognize his service before we send him off into the next chapter. So Chris, I'll hand it over to you for just overview of what's happening in brands, and take it away.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate it. Nice to see everybody. I think it's been a while since I appeared before you, either digitally or in person. So it's nice to see you all. I thought I'd take just a couple of minutes to give you a quick heads up on a few areas where brands is concerned. The new brand commissioner, obviously, personnel, the financial status of the brands and the brand board, and some missing and stolen investigations and activities. So I'll run through those areas quickly. I think those might be the most interesting, but if they're not, stop me and ask me what you'd rather have me talk about. So on the new brand commissioner, I suspect the commissioners long since briefed you on this earlier today. So we're in the process of identifying my successor, and I'm sure we'll do a good job, and he or she will do a good job. So there's not too much else that needs to be said about that. On the personnel side, we are, as I think you know, about 70 men and women spread out all over Colorado's 104,000 square miles. So we have a lot of moving parts, and for the most part, we're an interesting division because people love their work, and an awful lot of people retire out of this division as opposed to leaving this division. But having said that, we have the normal turnover that any operating entity does, and so we're wrestling with that just as everybody does. It will be interesting to see, as I know you're aware, the legislature will be considering some proposals from the state personnel union, the co-wins in next June and July, I guess, or this coming session. Obviously, you need Jordan is the guy to talk to about that, but that will have some implications for us, as I'm sure it will other divisions as well. On the financial side, those of you who are in the livestock business or watch the livestock business carefully know that we're an interesting time. Most of our revenue, obviously, we're 100% cash funded by the industry. So the vast majority of our revenue comes from livestock inspections, administrative fees and costs associated with that, and brand assessments. And the Colorado livestock herd at the moment is at its smallest since the 1960s. That's not a reason to go stand in front of a bus, because those things tend to change. And I'm sure this will change over time as well. But in the short term, that will have some impact on revenues coming into the brands division. So we'll need to keep a close eye on that. And the counterbalance to that on the financial side is that the world we live in now is a whole lot more expensive than it was even a couple of years ago. And it's about to get a lot more expensive where personnel costs are concerned. Things like vehicles for the brand inspectors are concerned and those kinds of things. So we will have some considerable pressure on the expense side in the face of a dwindling revenue side in the short term. And that will cause us to need to take a very close look at what we're doing and how we're doing it and make sure we're representing the industry well. They pay us, so we're mindful of how well we serve them. So that will be interesting in the next year or two, I'm sure. On the missing and stolen side, just one thing some of you who are interested in technology might be interested in this. We are experimenting in a couple of cases of large losses of cattle in rural areas. And when I say rural, this works best in areas where there's absolutely nobody else around. There's a ranch out in the middle of nowhere. And we have a good sense of when the cattle have gone missing. And we are using something called Google Geofence technology for the purpose of determining who was on that property on those days in that place so that we can figure out whether those people belong there or didn't belong there. And that will help us a lot in those very specific cases of hopefully solving some cases of missing livestock, which would be nice. It's nice for the producer, and it's nice as a deterrent to remind people that you're not supposed to be doing this, and we'll be paying close attention to it. And I think, Commissioner, at least on the sort of operational sides, those are kind of the things I would cover today, subject obviously to any questions or thoughts anybody might have. And Harrison, I like your partner for purposes of this meeting.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a cozy day in here.
Looks like it.
I think we certainly have time for questions, Colleen, if that works for you.
It's like Elena.
Yeah, I was just curious a little bit more about that. You just talked about, I mean, how does it work? It's using Google Earth, and is it just using imaging, or how is it tracking, like who's, I'm just really curious. That sounds really fascinating, how exactly that works.
You know what, I agree with you. It is fascinating. It's really pinging is the way I would describe it. I think most of us, certainly I don't realize and didn't realize, and now I'm really scared. Most of us don't realize that when we have our phones with us on or off, they are telling the world where we are. So what this technology really does is it takes a look, and let's take the example of a nice, very rural place. So you're not trying to ping somebody in New York City, which wouldn't work terribly well. But if you're trying to ping a location that's very rural, and you have boundaries for it, and you have dates when cattle have gone missing, you literally can check and see what phones were in that area on those days. And you know, sometimes you get a pizza delivery man, which is okay, and sometimes you get the owner, and sometimes you get people who need to explain what the heck they were doing there on those days. It is fascinating, I agree. A little scary, but fascinating.
Like Big Brother, but for cows.
Yeah, well, they deserve it. They need the help, huh?
Anyway, thank you. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Chris, I've got a question for you. On your, so it sounds like you're gonna be dealing with some pretty tight budget woes. I'm assuming the brand board has to vote for fee adjustments. How often do you utilize that, and or is that even the correct process to address some of your, well, inflation and low cattle numbers and things like that? How often do you adjust those rates? I don't pay much attention whenever I write that brand inspection check, but I'm just curious mostly.
Well, no, thank you. And good question. And you're dead right. The brand board is a type 1 board, so it passes its own regulations and does its own rulemakings and sets its own fees, et cetera, et cetera. So you're right. It is the body that does that. And we take, it's the responsibility of the brands division to keep the brand board up to speed on how things are going operationally and what the future looks like. The last time we raised fees was in 2014. And that fee increase went into effect on January 1, 2015. So it's been a while, and hopefully it'll be a while again. And so when I say those things about the finances, I don't say them because I know how it will turn out. I don't know how it will turn out, but I say it because we have a very close working relationship, obviously, with the livestock industry in the state. We don't like to surprise anybody. And we want to make sure that they're comfortable and up to speed on what's going on. And that process, Nick, would take, last time it took us 6 or 8 months, in the sense that what we did was go out to the industry and all industry groups on a regular basis and a consistent basis to explain what the situation was, explain what we believed we needed to make the case for what we'd like to get. And to set the stage for a rulemaking for that to happen. And as it happened last time around, the industry was terrific. And I think the division did a good job making them comfortable on what was required and what the realities were. So when we actually had the rulemaking, nobody showed up in opposition. I'm not sure anybody even showed up in support. I think we just had a hearing. So, but you're dead right. The process is 100% communication because they pay us. So it's we are mindful of their money.
Well, I would assume, just getting a little bit of PR goes a long ways in those instances. And I would assume, if you could pitch, some of these new technologies like you just talked about and give people a little more confidence and be a lot more okay with rate increases, knowing that probably your recovery rate on stolen livestock is probably going to improve.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, at bottom, Nick, it all comes down to whether people trust us and think we're good stewards of what we're asking them to pay. And if they think they're getting service for what we're doing, for what they're paying, then they're happy to participate. And I think we all know that 10 years is a long time. The world has changed a lot since 2015. So everybody's mature and thoughtful and understands that and takes that into account. So we'll see what happens. I'm not easy for me to say, I guess, because I won't be around, although hopefully I'll be helpful on the sidelines, but I'm not worried about it. The industry understands, I think, what we do, and if they don't like what we do, they'll certainly tell us. They've been good about that. So lines of communication are good. Whatever needs to happen, I suspect will happen without much fanfare, to be honest. Lots of angst, but not much fanfare.
Thank you.
You bet.
Chris, I'm going to flip the switch a little bit and congratulate you on your many years of wonderful service. I see your hat hanging in the background, and I'm hoping that you have 2 hats. And I hope that you have some wonderful plans for your retirement, some hobbies or some things that you've been really wanting to do. And I'm going to throw it back to Kate here for just a second.
Thank you.
Well, thanks, Colleen. I think I am at very close risk of overdoing it in celebrating Chris. I think I've probably already overdone it. But since you're here, Chris, I did just want a chance for the commission and anyone else on the phone just to say a few words to send you off properly. I do want to acknowledge that I mentioned we had our CARE Awards yesterday, recognizing people at CDA who go above and beyond. And Chris was recognized for receiving the Lifetime Achievement Award. and he was nominated by 19 of our staff, which is unheard of. So I think that just goes to show you what kind of impact Chris has had on us as a team and on our community across the state as well. So we have a few minutes if anybody wanted to open it up.
Chris, this is Dave Block out from Yuma. We really appreciate all you've done for over all the years. And as you well know, there's been a lot of cattle move through eastern Colorado. So with that being said, we really do appreciate it. And congratulations and best of luck to you in your future endeavors. Thank you again.
Well, thank you. I'll try to be useful to somebody. Appreciate it.
Zach, I see your hand raised. I'd like to acknowledge you, Zach Riley from CLA.
Yeah, I appreciate the acknowledgement, Colleen, and really appreciate the opportunity. I know it's a little unorthodox to get the throw in from the public, but I feel like representing a large swath of the cattle raising public, I couldn't at least try to take my shot here and say huge thanks to Chris. You know, you well know we have more cows pass through the state than most states alike us, and even in our neighborhood. And you have overseen an excellent staff with one of the lowest loss rates in the nation. And the stats speak for themselves on the things that you and your staff have accomplished. You've been a steward of industry and great safeguard to help maintain the future of this industry. And I hope that whatever happens after continues to include you and your leadership, but also that we're able to do it justice without you at the helm. So I appreciate everything you've done. And getting to sit on the interview panel with you yesterday was quite a treat. So I've never actually seen the exiting person take such a participative role and really make sure that the next person behind them is going to be as big a caregiver and caretaker of what they leave behind. And it's a legacy that you're leaving behind. So thank you for everything that you've done.
Well, thank you, Zach, and kudos to the commissioner and Hollis for including me. There are plenty of people who would not have, so I'm grateful for the opportunity. And I've tried to be quiet because, you know, I know how I did the job. I don't expect anybody else to do the job the same way. And I've said that to a couple of people who said, well, I don't think we do it the way you do it. And I said, good, do it the way you would do it. So it was an interesting experience. Thank you.
Chris, this is coming from someone who has retired from her own career. I'm sure you'll be called upon for your expertise. And so don't go too far, but I don't know if you're a fisherman or a golfer or what you are, but I hope you enjoy whatever things that you might have been giving up for your career. I'm gonna step out of bounds a little bit. I do know that we have a letter coming to you from the Ag Commission of your wonderful support and everything that you've done for Colorado Department of Ag. So thank you again.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it. I'll spend some extra time loving on my horse and donkey, I suspect is what I'll do.
Great. Kate, anything else?
That's it, Colleen. Chris, thanks for being on. And I do see Joe. I don't know if Joe's off mute.
I'm trying to find out where to raise my hand.
I'm sorry, Joe. I didn't mean to let you out, Joe. I just have a few people I can see at a time. So Joe, I'm sorry.
Oh no, I can't find the hand raiser on this thing. Anyway, I just want to say that Chris, we started out at about the same time when I was on the first Ag Commission, and I've watched you work with the public in a lot of places, represent the board at a lot of meetings. And I know what a good working relationship you've had with our brand inspectors. And so I just want to thank you with doing your job with energy, efficiency, but heart. And thank you so much. We'll miss you. And branding is on Labor Day. I mean, on Memorial Day. I expect you to be up here.
Well, be careful. I might be there. Yeah. Just be careful I don't brand somebody by accident.
That's all right. My father-in-law branded my son's best friend a while back, so that'll work.
Okay, so I'll be all right. It won't be completely an act. Okay, good deal. Thank you, Joe. Good to see you, man. But we've been bouncing around a while together.
All right, well, Chris, you are welcome to stay on board with us for the remainder of our meeting, but we understand retirement might be calling, right?
Well, retirement isn't, but trying to get squared away so that I can is
So
probably.
that you can, I understand. Thank you so much, and you have a nice holidays.
Thank you so much, everybody, for including me and for the kind remarks. I appreciate it greatly. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Thank you.
Bethany, are we able to hear and see you?
I
All
think
right.
so. Apologies. I was hitting the Zoom button and it just was frozen. So it was very obnoxious. I apologize. I could hear you guys. Just really quickly, I know as we already talked about, there's a lot of upcoming meetings and conferences and other things happening. So always reach out to me if you need any help at all with talking points and letting me know where you're going to be going. One thing that I did want to flag as we have all of these different opportunities, if you have a chance to step outside of your normal comfort zone a little bit and go to a different meeting or a different topic, I would highly encourage you to do that. I think we've had some discussions around how do we get people, your subject matter expert, but if you want to go visit another type of operation, those are things that we're going to be kind of hitting in the new year and figuring out, so I just always encourage, like, if you haven't gone to one type of meeting before, look at the ones that I'm sending out. I'm trying to do a diverse array of different types of things. So step into it to maybe a little different zone. And then with that, also, I know Hollis has talked a lot about the strategic plan. And we're working, with every single division on theirs. There was a lot of outreach and engagement with stakeholders that is starting to bubble up. And there are obviously some other grant opportunities and things that are going to require people to be out on the road and want to be engaging with stakeholders. And so in the coming months, I will be contacting you guys and leaning on you for advice about what are good community meetings for people to go to, and picking your brains a little bit as my resident toolbox of people who are the most knowledgeable about your region and the things that are happening there. Notably, I do want to mention that the REAP program, I think Hollis mentioned that earlier, they are going to be doing a lot of outreach and engagement in the coming months. And so trying to be strategic about how we do that, so that we're not burning out our staff, but also wanting to include you guys more with what we're actually talking about. So I'll be reaching out on those types of events, but not until the new year. So enjoy, going into your holiday season. Hopefully you have a lot of family time and other relaxing activities lined up, and are kind of coasting out of outreach meetings. So I'm not going to fill your ears with a lot of stuff to do until probably about January 6th. We're going to hit the ground running. So that's about it for outreach right now.
Thank you, Bethany. I know there's been a couple things on Pepler Farms I needed to take care of, but I'm ready to get out there and go again. So appreciate all the work that you do on this. We are a little bit behind, but I would like to give us a 5-minute break. And if everybody can be back promptly at, what do we got, 1:32? Because we have a presentation from Kevin Ryan on the Colorado River Compact. So let's take a quick 5-minute break, and then we'll sign back on and go from there.
Kevin, I see that you're sharing your screen. Do you need anything from me before I step away for a few minutes?
Sorry, you're a little muffled. Did you say that I should unshare for a minute?
No, I said, I see that you're sharing. Do you
Yeah.
need anything from me before I step away for a few minutes to use the restroom?
No, go right ahead. I think I brought that up because sometimes it takes time, but I'm ready to go as soon as you introduce me.
Okay,
Great.
great. Thank you so much, Kevin.
Of course.
Nick, how's your back?
That was a timely question, Colleen. I was walking around stretching my back. I don't know if you could see me there.
I wondered.
It's a little better. Sitting and driving still is pretty tough. I can sit in the car. I seem to do a little better in office just because I can move around a little better. But in a car, boy, I can only sit in the car for about 20-30 minutes before I got to get out and stretch it. And I got a surgical console, and they don't know what the heck's wrong with me. So I don't. It seems to be getting a little better over time, but unfortunately, nobody really knows what to do with me.
Oh, that's the worst. That's the worst time, is when you can't figure it out.
Yeah, it's pretty frustrating.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Fortunately, I'm still upright, so I can still actually get some work done. I'm not getting much office work done, but I can still do stuff on the ranch, so that's good.
Well, good. Well, we've been thinking of you.
Thanks for asking.
You bet.
And Colleen, I think we're ready whenever you are.
I think we are. Yeah, I think it's 1:33, and I do want to be respectful of Kevin's time. So Kate, can I let you introduce Kevin to us, please?
Yep, absolutely. Thanks, Colleen. Kevin, thanks so much for joining us. Our last Ag Commission meeting, we were talking about how great it would be to have you on to just give us an overview of our various compact obligations across the state. We know we have very limited time when it comes to the magnitude of the conversation, but this is also Kevin's sort of last few weeks before retirement. So we needed to snag you while we could, and at least kind of get that 30,000-foot view before your last day as well. So just know that this conversation will be ongoing, and Kevin, as always, appreciate you being willing to hop on and can give us the big picture about our compact sort of obligations and situation as it stands. So I'll hand it over to you, Kevin.
Thanks a lot, Kate. And just real quick, everybody can hear me good and clear? Thumbs up? Okay. Thanks a lot. And Kate is right. She asked me to do this, and a couple things. I obviously am always happy to help Kate out because of her commitment to what she's doing for the ag community and the ag sector in Colorado. I get to listen to her in meetings here and there, and watching her passion is just infectious. So I will be there whenever I can to just give you all some information, some helpful information. But I also have my own connection to the ag community because ag and water, they're just inseparable, and certainly in my work. With that, I won't spend too much time with an introduction. I will just jump right in. Talking about interstate compacts, the Colorado River Compact. I'll spend a little more time on the Colorado River Compact, but it's good to have a background on our interstate compacts and the way we stay in compliance in general. So I want to give that background just to give some context when we talk about the Colorado River. And, you know, it's just we all know what our state looks like, but when you look at the rivers flowing out of the state, you can see that we've got compact compliance issues all around the state. And I always like to point to this irony when we ask the question, what is the one compact in Colorado that we spend all our time talking about, that we talk about in the coffee shops, it's on the nightly news, it's in the newspapers everywhere you go? We're talking about the Colorado River Compact. And then I asked the follow-up question, what is the one and only compact in the state that we don't do daily administration at the Division of Water Resources to stay in compliance? And it's the Colorado River Compact. We're well in compliance on that compact, and I'm going to go into more detail on that in a few minutes. But we do have other compacts in Colorado, and I just really want to give you all a quick look at the State Engineer's Office. And this is a graphic I've used in the past. If we look on the left, these are expectations of Colorado water users. Routine water use, that's just priority administration. Injury determinations, that's well permits and substitute water supply plans. We have our water court obligations. We have our ad hoc needs. And over on the right is how we respond to those with our daily administration. We do approvals of many of these administrative needs. We participate in court, we provide solutions. So that's what we're looking at the State Engineer's Office in general. But I also like to point out we do that through science. We're engineers, we're technicians, and that's important. But we have the guidance from the law. And that gives us two very solid pieces of the foundation that guide what we do. But then here's that tough piece that always is troubling. When people want us to do something a little bit different from the law or the science, but there's policy implications. And I always like to think that, well, we need to address those, but we do that by incorporating policy into the law. And we've seen that over the years. That's how we deal with that. And, you know, I wish I had another 30 minutes to talk to you more about what the State Engineer's Office does, but that's just that quick look at what we do. Let's get on to compacts, because that's what we really came here to talk about today. You all have maybe seen this map before. All those yellow states are touched in some way by Colorado water that originates in Colorado from 4 major river systems. And that's the Platte, the Arkansas, the Rio Grande, and Colorado River and its tributaries. here are those, I don't think I mentioned it, we have 9 interstate compacts, and here are those 9 interstate compacts. And every corner of the state, they are all a little bit different in the way they operate, in the way they're administered. And again, without going into a lot of detail, I'm just going to compare these at a high level to give you an understanding of the way we stay in compliance and the way we need to operate them differently. So we're going to start with the Rio Grande Compact. And I didn't name those off before, but I'm going to touch on each one of them now. The Rio Grande and the La Plata River Compact. These are compacts where we deliver a portion of an index supply to the state line. What does that mean? It means for those compacts, and we'll start with the Rio Grande, if you look in that Colorado portion, because I'm showing New Mexico and Texas and the watershed, if you look in that Colorado portion, according to the compact, we have some places on the Rio Grande and on the Conejos River where we measure stream flow daily, real time. And based on the amount of water that flows past those stations in a year, we need to deliver a certain volumetric amount at the state line. And I'm not sure, never sure whether you can see my cursor, but right there at the state line, we're delivering a certain amount of water. So that's how we stay in compliance. It basically says, Colorado, how much water did you get flowing past these points? You owe us a graduated percentage of that at the state line. That's Texas and New Mexico telling us that. And then the La Plata, similar, but a little bit different. If we look up here at the top of this very small watershed for the La Plata River, we're measuring the flow of the water at a gauge. It's called the Hesperus gauge. And whatever that flow is, the next day at the state line, we need to deliver 50% of that day to day. And the way we do that is by curtailing water rights in this reach in Colorado if we need to ensure that those flows occur at the state line. So that's that index supply. But if we look at another way of, another way of administering compacts, we can look at the Costilla Creek Compact and the South Platte River Compact. And that's just basically prior appropriation in a sense. I'm kind of hijacking a Colorado term, but it is sort of a first in time, first in right. And if we look first at Costilla Creek, again, kind of flowing out of that Rio Grande Basin, in and out of Colorado, we just have water rights in Colorado and in New Mexico that have priority dates. And it's as though it were a river just in Colorado. We administer by priority. But the South Platte, so many of you are familiar with this compact. It's been in the news a lot lately, and we do that a little bit differently. Here at the northeast corner of the state, flowing into Nebraska, the South Platte has the Julesburg gauge. And the way we administer that compact, anytime the flow drops below 120 cubic feet per second during the irrigation season, we need to curtail water rights in just this lower section of the river, any water right that's junior to 1897. And we do that faithfully. Pretty much every year that happens and we have to do that. So it's really based on that 1897 priority date. It's almost like the compact has a priority date. Okay, then we'll look next at the Arkansas River. This is simple and very complex at the same time, but it is premised on post-compact development. The compact is dated 1948. Any development, or let me just phrase that differently, there is no development of water allowed in Colorado post 1948 under the compact. Any flows that exceed that amount go into something called the Conservation Pool and John Martin Reservoir that are shared by Colorado and Kansas water users. So it's just yet another different way of looking at it. And then, by the way, I'm sorry, I missed that map. That's the Arkansas. I hope you see that I'm moving through this pretty quickly because I'm trying to find that balance to give you that background on all the other compacts so that I can focus on the Colorado. The Republican River Compact and the Colorado River Compact. Now they're based on an allocation of the basin's water supply, and we'll just use general terms and call it the basin's water supply. But if we look at the Republican River, that basin, we can calculate the amount of water that's occurring in that basin during a single year, during this year. And then there's a way to calculate the allocation for Colorado, Nebraska, and Kansas on various tributaries. That's what Colorado is allocated. If we go over that allocation, we're out of compliance and we need to provide additional water to Nebraska and Kansas. It's a very interesting story with a compact compliance pipeline that's a good story for another day, but it really, again, Colorado is allocated a specific amount based on what occurs in the basin. Now, let's move on to the Colorado River Compact. That's the interesting one because it is also based on an allocation of the amount of water that was seen to be occurring in the basin, at least in 1922. The Colorado River Compact, and what does it say? Article 3D, the states of the upper division will not cause the flow of the river at Lee Ferry to be depleted below an aggregate of 75 million acre feet for any period of 10 consecutive years. What does that mean? That's a lot of language. And I'm sorry, Kate, do you see my cursor as I move it around?
Yep, you can see it,
Okay,
Kevin.
good. So what that tells us is that here we have Lake Powell and Glen Canyon Dam. And immediately below that, immediately below this blue delineation is a gauge at Lee Ferry. Lee Ferry, again, that's a real-time stream flow monitor. We know the volumetric amount passing that every year. And that's largely premised on the amount that's released from Lake Powell, but we know that amount. So every year, for every 10 consecutive years, we add that amount. And that needs to be above 75 million acre feet. If it drops below, it does not mean we're automatically out of compliance, but it means we need to do further inquiry to see whether the 4 upper basin states caused that. Because I'm going to back up here. The 4 states of the upper division will not cause the flow of the river at Lee Ferry to be depleted below an aggregate. So it doesn't mean just that it dropped below, but the 4 upper basin states caused it. That's a really tricky question. Going on, let's look at the upper basin, the 4 upper basin states. So this is that watershed that provides water to the Colorado River. That's where most of the water comes from. Now, just to update ourselves, when we're talking about the Colorado River in Colorado, certainly we have this main stem, this big amount of flow on the snake diagram, but the Gunnison, the San Juan, the Animas, La Plata, Dolores, they are all part of the tributaries that contribute and flow into Lake Powell. Even the San Juan that goes into Mexico and it ends up in Lake Powell. So again, there's that Lee Ferry measuring point. Now, I want to jump away from compact compliance for a minute and talk to you about everything that's going on with the 7 basin states on the Colorado River and the compact, because remember I mentioned we hear it in the news, we see it on the nightly news and on our internet feeds that we all go to read about. It's a big item. And these are the types of things they're talking about. Drought, sustained drought in the southwest part of the country for over 20 years. Over appropriation. We're using more of it than we have. So there's the Colorado River Compact itself, but there's the upper Colorado River Compact that I'm going to touch on in a minute. Compact Compliance Administration. Remember I said if we drop below 75 million acre feet in 10 years and we cause that to happen, then how do we administer our way out of that situation? How do we address that with the other states? There's the Drought Contingency Plan, a federally authorized effort to, among other things, allow the 4 upper basin states to create a pool of water that we could possibly use to stay in compact compliance. That demand management is that tool. The lake levels at Lake Powell and Lake Mead. When do the levels get so low that we can no longer produce hydropower? When do the levels get so low that some of the intakes for the water users from Lake Mead can no longer take water? Drought response operations agreements. These are all the things that who used to be my counterpart in CWCB, but our Upper Colorado River Commissioner, Becky Mitchell, is dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And I mean, for 8, 10, 12 hours a day, and then probably when she's lying awake at night. She has all these things to think about. And it's really tempting for me as the state engineer to say, I'd like to contribute. I have a lot of opinions. I have a lot of thoughts, and I do, but that's not my role, because my role, and more fairly our role at the Division of Water Resources, is to do water administration, and to do water administration for intrastate uses that you all see on a daily basis, but intrastate administration if we have a compact compliance obligation to live up to. So I take this questionable list, or it's not questionable, but this long, difficult list, and ask myself, what's important to me? And it's really that compact compliance administration in regard to the Colorado River Compact and the Upper Colorado River Compact. And that's what I want to talk about a little bit more for about the next 10 minutes or so. I want to leave time for questions and make sure we stay on schedule. But here it is again. What does the Colorado River Compact say? So not the Upper Colorado River Compact, but the Colorado River Compact in Article 3D. I brought it up before. The states of the upper division will not cause the flow to drop below 75 million acre feet total amount for any period of 10 consecutive years. That's the actual language from the compact. That's our standard. Now I want to point out that the compact allocates 7.5 million acre feet of the flow to the 4 upper basin states each year, and 7.5 million acre feet to the lower basin states. But that's an allocation. That's something that's set out in the compact, but it does not in and of itself spell out whether you're in compliance or out of compliance. And certainly it doesn't, because we know our lower basin states use much more than their 7.5 million acre foot allocation each year. But that just really points out this 75 and 10, as people say in shorthand, is our compact compliance standard. Now there's a difficult question, what is compliance and how do we maintain it? And that's where we get into the Upper Colorado River Compact from 1948. And that the purpose of that compact is that the 4 upper basin states had to come together. When I say 4 upper basin states, you saw it, Colorado, Wyoming, Utah, New Mexico. The 4 upper basin states had to come together and decide between themselves how they would manage a situation where we are out of compliance at Lee Ferry, if and when that occurs. And so we had to decide as 4 states that we recognize curtailment may be necessary if we conflict with Article 3 in the compact. The Upper Colorado River Commission was formed as part of that compact, and that commission is made up of commissioners from the 4 upper basin states, and Becky Mitchell is our commissioner for Colorado. And then there's a commissioner, a federal commission that represents the commission. And it says that that Upper Colorado River Commission, first of all, would have to make the determination through an inquiry that we're out of compliance. But when it does, and if it does, it would set the quantity and time of curtailment for each of the states. But this compact also leaves the latitude for Colorado and the other states to determine how to meet those compliance obligations. So it's a little rigid on one hand, but it also leaves us some latitude on the other hand. Compact compliance strategy for Colorado is going to then address those components, those things that we need to do if the Upper Colorado River Commission comes to us and tells us that we need to do that according to Article 4. Multifaceted holistic approach. How are we going to do that? That's part of our compact compliance strategy. Just repeating myself there. What I really want to do and what I like to do is give you data. And that's my main message here today, if nothing else. I was put in this position of state engineer about 6 years ago, and immediately I started getting questions. State Engineer Ryan, it looks like we're going out of compliance. It looks like compliance is a concern. What are you going to do? What shall we do? And I didn't have any good answers at the time. So I did like an engineer or just any person would do, all thinking people would do, give me some data so I know what I'm talking about. And I went to the reports. For example, here's the data from the Upper Colorado River Commission 73rd annual report. And if you look in the third column in the first column by year, you can see in the middle column our annual flow at Lee Ferry. Remember, I described that, our stream gauge, and that volume that has flowed past that for each year. And we see numbers like 8.3 million, 8.395. We have some great numbers in 2011, 12.7, and then 9.5. You get the idea. And then in the third column is that number that represents the 10 years before that. So in 2012, we see 90,361,000. That's the amount that would have been shown in the 10 previous years in this middle column. The point of all that, it's a simple chart and it's a simple concept, but we have to look at the data, and that data shows that even in 2021, we're at 88 million acre feet at Lee Ferry. Now, what are we comparing that against? 75 million. That's a good number. That gives me a lot of confidence that we are not out of compliance now, and we're not about to slip out of compliance. But I'm going to focus on those last 5 years and highlight them green again, because those are the numbers I just gave you, actual totals, and we actually go up to 2022 now with 85 million. So those are numbers in the books. And then we can look at a projection, and that projection is based on the Bureau of Reclamation's 24-month study, and it's very conservative. We would say that for 2023 and 2024, we're looking at 9.2 million and 7.6 million. Now, those are good numbers, and you can see that it's even increased our 10-year total to 86 million. Now, here's where that shortcut of 7.5 million acre feet a year does come in handy, because we can all do the quick math. If we're hitting 7.5 million acre feet a year, we're going to stay in compliance, because at the end of 10 years, you're always going to be at least at 75 million acre feet. But my point then continues with one more year, 2025, where we look at my conservative assumption, 7 million acre feet, we're still at 84 million. Now that takes us conveniently to the date by which the 7 states need to finish new guidelines for operations of Lake Powell and Lake Mead. So it takes a little bit of the pressure off when we think about, will we be out of compliance? And the nice graphical way to look at that is, here's a very conservative projection to 2025. We've still got this big gap between our actual deliveries and this 75 million acre foot number. Is that a guarantee? No, but it's fairly close to a guarantee, because it's just real data. And then, you know, what happens after that, we can be optimistic or pessimistic, but we really need to think about that in terms of what shall we do now? Because we're in compliance now, and for the near term, we're under our allocation. The 4 upper basin states use about 4.5 million acre feet a year, 3.5 million. Remember, that's compared to our 7.5 million. So we're way under our allocation. As far as current curtailment, for intrastate administration based on limited water supply and prior appropriation, that's me as the regulator, the water administrator, telling our ag community and our water users in the Colorado River Basin, if you have a beneficial use for your water and water is physically and legally available, divert it. I am not in the business of telling you, you need to use less water, because we're worried about the lower basin states getting enough water. Now, certainly not Becky Mitchell, certainly not me, Someone else may decide that's a good idea, but that's not the message you're getting from Becky or me. I can't speak for Becky, but I will this one time. There's no basis to curtail for compact purposes. We are in compliance, and we are in the near future. No basis to compel federal projects to release water that has Colorado water rights. There's no authority to shepherd that water. So looking at that, probability of UC an Upper Colorado River Commission determination in the near future is very low on the near term. What is the role of the Upper Colorado River Compact and the Commission's role? There's a lot of unknowns as far as how that would happen. And that leads me to say that right now it's very difficult to create a blueprint for what people should be doing due to compact administration concerns, because we know so little about how that situation would appear and manifest itself for us. Now, what I'd like to do is just superimpose my curtailment bubble on what I talked about before. We don't want just a broad brush attempt at curtailment to take away all that sophisticated work we Colorado water users do to implement a very well thought out, very reliable system of administration. We want to be more thoughtful about it. And that's why we need to allow ourselves to develop our reaction to one last point. And that is, what can we do now? If we look at a compact and compact compliance, and we recognize a Colorado diversion that would have a stream impact, and this is just generic, and that stream impact would create a compact obligation, we can find a way to put wet water back in the river. We do this through augmentation plans on the South Platte. We do it on the La Plata with Long Hollow Reservoir. We do it in the Republican. We deliver that water and we're back in compact compliance. That works on the South Platte. We do it every year. That works on the Republican with our compact compliance pipeline. Works in the Arkansas with replacement plans. It works in the Rio Grande with annual replacement plans. We talked about the La Plata. It works on the La Plata. What about the Colorado River? Does it work? It does not work the same. And I think this will be my last slide, so bear with me. What's important for the Colorado, we don't really know what compliance is or what out of compliance means and whether we caused it. That's up to the Upper Colorado River Commission. It's their determination. It's not a 7-state or just a Colorado determination. The 4 states compliance obligation is not for one water user to implement, or even just Colorado. And the compliance point is 2 states away and at least 1 major regulated reservoir away, like Powell, at Lee Ferry, recall. So imagine somebody on the Fraser River that is diverting water, and somehow we try to identify them as the cause of being out of compliance, and they want to try to deliver water to Lee Ferry, along with Utah, New Mexico, Wyoming. We don't even know how that would. And that's the question of how would we comply with the findings of the Upper Colorado River Commission? How do the 4 states in Colorado maintain compliance? Those are the reasons we can't just put into place certain plans right now for that implementation, so to speak, of a strategy that would be that blueprint on how we're going to operate. And that's where, sorry, this is my last slide. What about rules for compact compliance administration? We can start determining vulnerabilities. We can start looking at strategies, but we can't create that blueprint. And that's probably the main message for me. Becky Mitchell has her hands full with a lot of things, but as far as the water administration from the state engineer's office, we continue to keep our ear to the ground, more than our ear to the ground. We continue to go out and listen. We understand those vulnerabilities. We understand people's concerns, and we take that back and we work with the Attorney General's office and Becky Mitchell to say, what can and should we be doing now? And I'm going to stop right there. I think that is what I really wanted to convey. And Director Greenberg, or sorry, Commissioner Greenberg, I'll ask you, did you have any other thoughts on what you'd like me to share and or what questions people have?
Yeah, Kevin, that was fantastic. And obviously, you can see your ability to do this presentation in such a short time and cover the entire state. So I figure if we have a few minutes, Colleen, we could open it up to questions from the group.
Absolutely.
Kevin, this is Simon. Thank you for that information. I know that there's a lot involved in everything you talked about, and gosh, less than the time you were given. But thank you for sharing with the commission everything that you do there in your department with all that's going on in the state of Colorado, and then not only that, but every other state that water flows to. So I just wanted to say thank you, and all the issues on compliance is an eye opener, but there's a lot of work being done there. I just want to tell you thank you for taking your time out to address those with us.
Yeah, thank you for the nice comments, Simon, because it does recognize the time and resources that the Attorney General's office, Department of Natural Resources, and I and my staff are putting into it. It's very important to us.
Thank you.
Harrison?
Thanks so much for that presentation, and honored that you joined us for our commission meeting. My question is maybe a little vague, but I'd be curious to hear your answer. It seems that for the to launch projects, to maintain infrastructure, to do a lot of the things that we need to do to be prepared for any number of futures, it takes a lot of coordination between not only state, but maybe more importantly, federal agencies. What do you see as the state engineer's role in coordinating and or negotiating with the gamut of agencies that are involved in any of these projects today?
Harrison, that's a great question. And I think I understand when you talk about projects, I think you led off by talking about infrastructure. Maybe we're talking about aging infrastructure, or infrastructure that can become more efficient, better at doing what it needs to do for agricultural uses. And it's a nice coincidence that your commissioner, Kate Greenberg, and I and several other people have been involved in the Colorado River Drought Task Force. And that, goes specifically to identifying tools that can help with drought resilience and interstate commitments. And I saw just a resounding effort by that task force to identify these funding needs and taking the best advantage of funding opportunities. And to answer your question, so many of those are administered through the Colorado Water Conservation Board, or some federal funding through the Department of Natural Resources. And I will even talk about our 4 boots on the grounds CWCB representatives that manage grants. So I think, the Colorado Water Conservation Board staff is your first stop to make sure that ag is taking the best advantage of those monies that are available through grants or other funding opportunities.
Thanks.
Sure. And I'll say, Commissioner Greenberg, if there is a need, or if it's helpful, we could identify those 4 representatives around the state that do that work.
Yeah, actually, Kevin, that would be helpful, and we can send that out to the commission after this. Thanks for that.
I see Roberto has his hand up.
Hi, Kevin. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that information and the data. Really fascinating to kind of see that. I kind of have 2 questions and would like to maybe see if there's a connection there. But one is, to what extent have Native communities been a part of the conversation historically and leading up to the compact? And then a follow-up to that would be, what would like a new approach to developing an updated compact kind of look like to be more inclusive and more comprehensive? And then would love to kind of hear your thoughts around appropriate updates in that regard.
Yes, thank you, Roberto. And again, it's a really timely question. I'm glad you asked that. There has been a significant effort from the Colorado River Drought Task Force, and I'll go back to Senate Bill 295, engaging the tribal users, our two tribes in the southwest corner of the state, the Ute Mountain Ute and the Southern Ute. And those entities have been at the table in the Colorado River Drought Task Force, but there is also a sub-task force that focuses specifically on tribal issues. And those issues have made it into this report. And so they're at the table. But your question was a little more specific to the compact. And I will then give you two different answers to that. One, in my role as the state engineer, and probably more humility oriented, the role of my staff in the Durango office. I believe they have a very good rapport from the water administration standpoint with the tribal water users. And there's good coordination there. But I'll also go back to Becky Mitchell, the commissioner, and she's, of course, served on this sub-task force, and she has made it very clear that the work she's doing is very, very strongly oriented toward getting that input from the tribal water users. Now, the tough part is, what about renegotiating the compact and making a native presence more prominent in the compact? I don't think you'll see any of the 7 basin states, for any reason, amenable to opening up the compact and renegotiating it. So I think it's for Becky Mitchell as the commissioner to work, and the other 7 states, the other 6 states, to work inclusively with the tribes to make sure that they're represented in the decisions that are being made, because they're impacted, they have water rights, they're impacted, so they need to be at the table.
All right, thank you.
George?
Yes, thank you, Kevin. That's a great presentation. I learned quite a bit this morning. And my question, I guess, is to ask you where that potential water leasing could come in to the strategies as we go forward. It seems like there's some opportunity there to get a balance maybe of exchanging money for water with some of the downstream states, and we want to be careful about that, I'm sure. But is that something that we're considering?
George, so it's a little bit of a broad question when you talk about leasing, but I think you focus it toward the end. And let me just repeat what I thought I heard you say, the question about maybe leasing water to the downstream states in order to maybe satisfy a demand that they have, or maybe toward meeting our compact compliance. Could you fine tune that question, George?
Well, what I was thinking about is individuals who may have water that they felt like they could lease and put into the system, and then whether it be individuals or the state, but I was thinking more of individual farmers maybe releasing water for a monetary return.
Yeah, so let me set out the 2 components of that, George. First of all, I know that there is a pretty strong aversion, not by every member of the West Slope community, but maybe in general from the West Slope community, to the idea of just taking consumptive use out of production and leasing it to the lower basin states just because they need it, just because they want and need more water. And that's really a difficult policy issue. I don't have a good opinion on that, but other than to say there's that strong aversion that I just noted. But the other part of it is George, the concept of demand management it's got its three legs of the stool: temporary, voluntary, compensated. That's through a formal federal program that would be recognized and set out by the Upper Colorado River Commission. So there would be a potential there that people could take water out of consumptive use, park it, for example, in Lake Powell, and be compensated and do it on a temporary basis. But that would be strictly for Colorado to use if it's needed to stay in compliance with the compact. Now, of course, incidentally, the downstream states would get the benefit of that water, but it would be through compact compliance. So I guess that was a little long-winded, George, but it's my reticence to really address this idea of water users just leasing water that they've saved through consumptive use outside of the Upper Colorado River Commission's formal actions, because we just get into a few different difficult areas of the law and policy.
Thank you. That's kind of what I thought, but I just wanted to bring that up. Yeah.
George, I appreciate you saying that, because I wasn't sure whether I just talked around in circles. So thank you.
No, you did fine. Thanks.
Are there any other questions for Kevin? Kevin, thank you so much. The complexity of water is just overwhelming sometimes. Oh, wait, I see a hand here from.
It's my reaction.
Oh, okay, great, thank you. That was an applause, not a hand. So the complexity of water always amazes me. I grew up on a dryland wheat farm in eastern Colorado, and now for the last 40 years, I've been involved with irrigation water along the Front Range. And my phrase, although it sounds simple, water is gold. And
it sure is.
Yeah. So I'm sure your presentation could go in more depth, and I'm sure we would all find it very fascinating, but we appreciate you sharing the information about the compact and how that all transpires. And from the commission, congratulations on your retirement. We see some shoulders getting a little higher, dropping down a little bit today. We saw that with Chris from our brand inspection, and I think we're seeing that from you also, Kevin. But I'll turn that back over to Kate, and thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure, Colleen.
Well, I think Colleen said it well. So Kevin, thanks so much for doing this today, and thanks for all you've done for Colorado. And I'm sure this won't be the last we see you, but wishing you well over this transition.
I hope not. And, I came into the meeting in the middle of a discussion of someone else's retirement, and I was just echoing, or all those comments were just reverberating in my mind. It's a privilege for me to come before the commission today and talk about this, because it's what I love to do. And so thank you for the opportunity, and I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you again. You're welcome to stay on, Kevin. We are going to flip from water and go straight into animal health update with Maggie, Dr. Bowen.
Yeah, hello. Can you guys hear me okay? And before Kevin hops off, if he still is on, I had the privilege of having dinner with Kevin at the Ag Drought Task Force a couple of years ago. We sat across from each other at the dinner table, and I looked at him, I said, "You're the state engineer." I said, "I'm the state veterinarian." I said, "What exactly do you do?" And he said, "What exactly do you do?" And so we spent dinner learning about what each other does, which was really a lot of fun. So hopefully, I'm in the car, as you can see. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay. And I'm going to go ahead and try to share my PowerPoint. I've also got Dr. Morgan McCarty on, our assistant state veterinarian, and she is going to help me with a little bit of this. How do those slides look? Good? Okay. All right, great. If for some reason my hotspot goes out, or we have any other technical issues, hopefully Morgan can take over until I get back on. But I was asked today to give animal health updates. We have a lot because there's a lot going on, but I'm going to start with our highly pathogenic avian influenza response update. And we have a lot of new commission members since I think the last time I gave a really in-depth overview. So some of this is going to be a little bit of background, maybe some reminders for some of you that have already heard this, but also might be new information for some of you that haven't. So Colorado poultry industry overview. We are not a really big poultry state, but we have about 5.12 million laying hens in the state. Total chickens, about 6.26 million. That includes, we have some broiler breeder facilities on the western slope. Broiler breeders are the hens that lay the fertile eggs that go on to become the broiler chickens in our grocery stores. And then we have a lot of backyard poultry, exhibition poultry, some niche markets, specialty birds. We do have game bird flocks in the state. We have one specialty flock on the western slope that produces 75% of the world's fly tying feathers. So we have a very unique poultry distribution across the state. So what is highly pathogenic avian influenza? I think this is really important for you guys to understand some of the challenges that come with dealing with this particular disease. So it is an avian influenza virus, influenza A type virus. This is a virus that's naturally carried by waterfowl and shorebirds globally. So influenza A in general is classified into subtypes based on the surface protein. So you have a virus and it's got two types of proteins on the surface. One type is the H's, another type is the N's, and they've been found in all different combinations. There's 18 different types of H's, there's 11 different types of N's, and they've been found in all different types of combinations, especially in our waterfowl and shorebirds around the globe. The ones that we are particularly concerned about that are highly pathogenic have an H5 subtype and an H7 subtype. And the strain that we are dealing with right now, or we have been for the last almost 2 years now, is H5N1. And there's subclades in each of those categories. I'm not going to go into that. But influenza viruses, just to say, are complicated. They're very complicated. What's important is that these viruses are carried naturally by these waterfowl and shorebirds, but they cause significant disease in poultry. So in our chickens and turkeys, pheasants, quail, and then to a lesser degree in ducks and geese, because those are the reservoir species. Those are the ones that naturally carry these. But they cause more than 90% morbidity and mortality rate, meaning that the flocks that are affected, we really see almost 100% mortality in these flocks. And the birds get pretty sick pretty fast and die pretty fast and are significantly impacted. So it is a foreign animal disease, meaning it's a disease that we generally do not have in this country, we do not want in this country, and because of that, there's a lot of challenges that come with dealing with that because we don't vaccinate, for example, for foreign animal diseases. It is a devastating and highly contagious disease. So a guidance that we received from our CSU partners is a goose that is shedding high path avian influenza in its feces, a dime-sized drop of feces, carries enough virus to kill 1 million chickens. So they are shedding tons and tons and tons of virus in their feces and their respiratory droplets and their saliva. They're just shedding lots of virus and they are flying vectors of disease. It's really challenging to mitigate against these viruses when they're flying all around. There is no treatment. There is currently no vaccination. There's no vaccination that is approved in the US. There are some countries that are trying vaccination because we have all been dealing with this now for a couple of years, but there is nothing that is currently approved in the United States. Obviously, this is something that causes significant impacts to our producers and to our communities that are affected. Dealing with our producers that have been impacted, even our backyard flocks, you know, this is a really devastating disease. It of course causes economic impacts. We're talking millions and millions of birds. Trade restrictions are also imposed. So the thing that drives our domestic markets here in the United States for our animal proteins is our ability to export. And if we lose our ability to export, that impacts our domestic markets and our domestic market prices and our ability to move, our trade products around. And so with foreign animal diseases, trade restrictions are imposed. So how do we prevent this? Biosecurity, implementing as much biosecurity as we can on these farms to, hopefully prevent the disease from entering. But again, this is a flying vector of disease. It's very, very hard to mitigate against. As I watch all of the birds flying in the sky around me right now, it's really hard to mitigate properly. And so control is we detect those flocks and then we depopulate those flocks. And again, it causes almost 100% mortality. So depopulation is for a couple of reasons. So what does response look like? Response here in the state, we really try to operate as a state level response. We at CDA have jurisdictional authority over foreign animal disease response in our state, but we really rely on our USDA partners for this. And there's a lot of guidance that USDA requires for these flocks that are detected. So we have a lot of steps that we have to take to comply with USDA guidelines, and that's important to maintain international trade. We also rely on state emergency operations center support. We have received several governor's disaster declarations for this, and that allows us to use disaster emergency funding. And then we deploy state type 3 incident management team resources through the state emergency operations center. And if we have a detection, particularly at a commercial facility, we set up an incident command post with our incident management team. I have historically served as our incident commander for the state. And then we have a co-incident commander on the USDA side. So what does it look like if we have a detection on the flock? This is a guidance that USDA has published. So you just kind of understand this is sort of what one flock would look like. But of course, the first step is to detect. Then we quarantine that premises. USDA does pay for indemnity for the birds and the eggs that are either depopulated or destroyed. And then we depopulate those birds. They also pay compensation for the activities surrounding the detection. So cleaning and disinfection, disposal, all of the steps that they are required to take. We manage disposal. That might be burial, it might be composting, very limited circumstances, might be landfill. Some of the smaller backyard flocks, we've also used pet crematoriums. And then we go through virus elimination process. So on these really big layer complexes, for example, they'll use formaldehyde fumigation in all of the houses. So they do a dry cleaning and get all of the, dry organic material out, and then they formaldehyde. And then we go through and we actually do environmental testing on these premises to make sure that we've killed the virus, to make sure before they restock that there's not any live active virus around. So we actually go through and we swab all of the surfaces. We swab the feeders and the waters and the doors and the handles and the floors and make sure that we can't detect any virus. And then they have to wait a certain period of time after that testing is completed before they can restock their premises. I took these updated numbers yesterday. So this is where we are at right now. And I've got to minimize this little box here so I can see the numbers. So we have a little over 1,000 confirmed flocks. This is since this has been almost 2 years that we have been in this outbreak now. So a little over 1,000 confirmed flock. 47 states across the country have been impacted. Commercial versus backyard flocks is, almost split half and half. And a total number of birds impacted, again, nationwide, is 72.5 million birds. This is a state total outbreak with total number of birds affected in sort of this green shaded. You can see Iowa has been the most impacted, and then Colorado is, I think, right now about fourth or fifth. We're kind of sort of right around the same as Nebraska or Minnesota, and so really we've had a total number of birds has been significant. This is just so you can see nationwide the total overall outbreak. Across the state, this is what we're seeing as far as numbers. We've seen it really in almost all corners of the state. And this is available. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on this because all of this is available on our website. And Dr. McCarty, if you're available to drop the link in the chat box, everybody could access our website. That would be great. We've had a total number of premises affected is 31 premises. 8 of those have been commercial and 23 of those have been non-commercial or backyard premises. So we've had 1 broiler breeder facility on the western slope impacted, 5 table egg layers. It's actually 4 premises, but one of them was impacted twice. They were impacted last June, and then they repopulated and they were impacted again last December. And then we had 1 pullet facility and one commercial game bird facility. We also did have a game bird facility that's classified as non-commercial just a couple of weeks ago. But 23 backyard facilities, you know, really ranging from 200 to 600 birds. So what have we been doing here in the States? We do have plans in place, and we're happy to share anything that you guys would like to see. Most of this is available on our website, though we are working on updating our emergency management page. But we have a Colorado Poultry Emergency Response Plan, which just walks you through what are the basic tenets of response for high-path avian influenza. And then we do have MOUs with CDPHE, with the Eastern Colorado Incident Management Team for support on these incidents. We've been doing tabletop exercises, not as relevant now because we've been in this for 2 years. And last spring, we met with all of our commercial producers in the state, 1, to make sure that they were all ready in case we did have a detection of high-path avian influenza. And then 2, to make sure that we have plans in place for, you know, biosecurity to prevent it from coming in, but also if we had a detection, what are we going to do? What are our plans for depopulation? What's the plans for disposal? Site-specific planning was really critical for us. So we did that last spring. We've done that again this fall. We have 1 more facility that we're going to be meeting with. I think that meeting is set with for the 20th. But several of our field team have been going out to these facilities. I think Dr. McCarty has a site visit scheduled for Friday for one of the facilities on the western slope. So we're working really hard with our producers to make sure, 1, we don't want to get it. We want to keep it out and really create good biosecurity plans. But if we get it, what do we need to do to respond? So this is where I'm going to ask Dr. McCarty to come on and talk about what are our next steps. We've got a couple of things that we're working on in addition to the other planning that I already mentioned. But I'd like Morgan to go through some of those additional steps that the team has been working on.
Yeah, thanks, Maggie. Can you hear me okay? All right. So yeah, future planning. I am actually excited to go out to do a site visit on Friday to one of our Western Slope producers. It's going to be nice going out to that facility that's not affected with high-path AI and actually go through the steps on how they can keep it out. We're hoping to work with USDA Wildlife Services. They have offered their assistance in coming out to these site visits with us. They are obviously the SMEs in wildlife and hopefully helping producers keep wild birds and rodents, etc. out. So like Maggie said, it's a collaborative effort between USDA, whether that's veterinary services or wildlife services, and CDA. So it's been a great partnership with them. I think the first thing that we're going to talk about is the sustainable model for response. And what we've learned over the past 2 years is that our responses to high-path AI have been exceptional. Not to brag on our division, but we have been really the envy of all states as far as our responses, as far as how organized and effective they are and how well we work together with USDA as a team. But one of the things that came out of our after action report was that our response level is not sustainable at the level we were working at. And so we were just going basically 24/7. responding here and acting as fire trucks and putting out disease outbreaks. And really our entire division was just exhausted. And I talked to Dr. Baldwin. I said, there's got to be a better way. This can't all fall on the shoulders of the animal health division. And so we really started brainstorming what could CDA do as a whole. And so the foreign animal disease strike team concept was born. And first I want to thank Commissioner Greenberg and her office, and of course all the division directors for their support of this concept. This really started rolling around in our heads probably about 11 months ago. It's been a little slow for me getting it off the ground. We've been dealing with other things while we've worked on this, but really this was born out of the need for high path response, but will be beneficial for any animal disease response and potentially even an all hazards incident involving livestock, because we'd be training CDA staff who aren't necessarily staff members of the animal health division. But what our goal is to develop a core team of animal health disease responders who've had similar training and who are interested in responding to animal disease emergencies. By adding these additional team members to foreign animal disease responses, animal health division staff will have an opportunity to relieve during longer deployments when we're on these responses. And while it was born out of the need for high path AI response, this is, we've talked about African swine fever. Hopefully that's not a new virus in your guys's playbook. And of course, foot and mouth disease is kind of the big bad one that we really want to keep out. So while we talk high path response, this is certainly not just specific for high path response. Currently, the positions that staff, which would be CDA staff, would be eligible to be trained for are biosecurity and cleaning and disinfection lead for disease containment, as well as the safety officer positions. And so this is an opportunity for all CDA employees to participate if they're interested. And I just saw right before I came on camera that the employee roundup was released, which is CDA's newsletter. And we made like the second to top headline for that. And that is our call to CDA employees saying, hey, we are launching this strike team. This is an opportunity for you. Your division directors support it. You have to have permission or approval from your direct supervisor and your division director to apply, but this is an opportunity for you to learn new skills and get involved in something within CDA that you may never have had the opportunity to do before. And we certainly know that this is not for everyone. And so we know we'll have staff members who think they're interested and they'll start the training process and realize, I don't think this is for me. And so we're kind of ready for all of those potential issues that may come up surrounding, having folks who aren't specifically involved in animal disease response every day. So kind of prepared for that. Training for this opportunity is going to begin in January. So very soon, it's right around the corner. We're asking for folks to consider this opportunity for about a month. It will close January 12th. There's a form to fill out that was emailed to everyone if they're interested. And that first phase of training will be online training. They'll have to complete ICS courses through FEMA and also some USDA courses. And then once those courses are complete, there'll be in-person training that is required. So those participants will join the Animal Health Division, and USDA employees will actually participate in tabletop exercises in person, as well as biosecurity training exercises in person. So we'll all get together and really form that team that we're looking to form. So that bond and stuff that teams have is hopefully what the strike team will be, is a bonded group of folks who respond. So that's the strike team. And then second, Dan Frazen is working really hard on procuring our response trailer. And this is another concept that we have been kicking around for about 11 or 12 months. And we currently don't have a great way of inventory management and handling all of our supplies. Some of our supplies are in Fort Collins, some of them are on the Western Slope, some of them are in Broomfield. And we are looking to procure additional depopulation supplies, and our response trailer will house all of that. So with great support, we are in the process of procuring that trailer. Responders can hook onto that trailer. Everything they need will be in that trailer, and we can begin a response, whether that's foreign animal disease response or potentially even all hazards response. So we're really gearing up and looking to expand our response capabilities. With that, I think I've talked probably long enough. I think Maggie said brief, and that was not brief, so I apologize. So if anybody has any questions for me, I'd be happy to take those after Maggie gets done talking with the rest of her.
Thank you, Morgan. And I will, Morgan, that was perfect. We needed exactly what we needed covered. I will also give a shout out to Morgan and a really big thanks for her leadership in putting this together. This has been not a small task. This has been a lot of work. And she just won yesterday one of our CARE awards for the work that she has been doing on this, the award for our core value of proactivity. And so we're really proud of that and really appreciate the work she's put into this. So I know you guys were already behind on your agenda, and I don't want to make you more behind. I had a couple more very brief slides, if I can get my slides to go again. And one, I know you guys were interested in the canine respiratory disease. Morgan, would you also mind dropping in the chat the link to our canine respiratory disease? Very briefly, I think many of you have probably heard, because there's been a lot of media interest about the canine respiratory disease outbreak. You know, in brief, yes, we have heard from veterinarians there's been an increased number of respiratory cases across the state. Some of those progress to pneumonia. It does not seem to be a highly fatal disease, and we have not yet found any single conclusive testing. So we put together a website with information. CDA is coordinating with Colorado State University, the Diagnostic Lab, the Teaching Hospital, USDA, CDPHE, our Colorado Veterinary Medical Association, and trying to get good information out mostly, and answering media questions, and trying to you know, calm the fears, I think, in our pet owners, because I think everybody, when there's a lot of media interest, that it sometimes, you know, takes hold, and then we just need to step back and recognize that this might not be something new. It might not be something novel, but we are also working with CSU on distributing some test kits to select hospitals to see if we can get some better diagnostics. So CDA is funding part of the test kits that are going out through CSU. And then there's some commercial entities that are funding the testing on that. So nothing new, but feel free to read through that webpage, and feel free to reach out directly if you guys have any questions. Also wanted to just briefly mention our Colorado Wild Horse Program. I don't think that we've had this on the agenda to talk about yet, and maybe sometime next year we could dive a little bit more when we get more work done. That's actually why I'm on the road today. I'm on my way back. We were down at the Canyon City facility touring their wild horse holding facility. And so that was a really good opportunity. That was with the working group. So we've been facilitating the working group meetings, and we're also working on funding some pretty good infrastructure projects, on range management projects. But we'd be happy to maybe put this on an agenda item for next year and give a good update once more of those projects get underway. But just so you all know, we got that money, we are working on it. And there's a lot. Wayne East is our project lead on this. He's our Ag Wildlife program manager, and he has been doing a fantastic job running this so far. Last couple of things, the Office of Animal Welfare, we've gotten that stood up. I think you guys have already gone over the budget and legislative items. There's a lot for animal health. Again, we really appreciate the support that everybody has been providing. Truly, you know, last year, one of our budget items was for additional funding for emergency response. We are putting those dollars to good use in what Morgan has talked about, our response equipment, you know, really getting our team better prepared, better trained for these responses. Same with all of these other budget items that are coming up this year. So Division of Animal Welfare is one of them. Emergency management is another one. So we've got a lot on our plate. We are also, the last time we presented to you all, Morgan presented our rule review. And one of the promises we made out of that was that we were going to be completing our import requirement review and updates. That was one of the things we had to do out of that rule review. And thankfully, Billy has been incredibly patient with us as we have gone through a very, very extensive review of our import requirements, but it has been incredibly helpful. And, you know, we've really tried to streamline the import requirements while also maintaining the health of Colorado's herd. That's the whole point of having these import requirements, is that we protect Colorado's herd when we have new animals coming in. But we had a lot of requirements on there that really just didn't need to be on there. They were for old diseases that we don't see anymore. They were for, you know, treatments of things that we really should not be treating for anymore. So it's going to be a lot less burdensome for producers to bring animals across state lines, at least into Colorado. And we're really trying to streamline those while maintaining that herd health. Up next, after we get import requirements done, is going to be reportable disease review. So that'll be our next deep dive project. That is it. And I think we started way late and we only ended 4 minutes late. So I'm happy to take questions, or we can hold questions if you guys want to just reach out later if you have questions. Either way works for us.
I think we have time for questions. That's it. That's all you have to share.
I have so much more.
I know.
I have
know.
so much more, but I really tried to pare it down to the need to know for now.
Absolutely, and appreciate that, and appreciate what you and Dr. McCarty do. I think we do have time for questions. We should have time.
You bet.
Dr. Morgan and Dr. Maggie, this is David Block. How long do you think HPI influenza is going to hang around, or have any ideas there, or will we be looking possibly to get some vaccinations going sometime?
So I sure wish I had a crystal ball, David, to answer that question. You know, here's the challenging thing. If you saw on one of the slides, this is a virus that's carried by our wild birds, our wild waterfowl, and our shorebirds, and is really impacted by our migratory pathways. So, you know, as we see migration in the spring and as we see migration in the fall, that's when we start seeing cases again. That doesn't mean we don't have cases throughout the year, because we're now seeing H5N1 in our resident birds. And for instance, our birds of prey, our hawks, eagles, owls, you know, raptors, and that has been more challenging. And here in Colorado, you know, we've got what, 750,000 snow geese that overwinter on the eastern plains, and boy, they are all carrying H5N1. I shouldn't say all, that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but a large percentage of them are carrying H5N1. So, you know, that is the challenge, is it really seems to come in the waves. What's very unique, and I talked about this previously, what's very unique about this outbreak versus any other outbreak is it's sustained in this wild bird population. Before, we used to see a surge of high path AI strain come in. We'd see it come through in one migration, you know, season, and then it was done. Then we didn't have to worry about it again. This, we are seeing globally, everywhere, consistently for years. We are now, I think, some of the European countries are in year 3 of dealing with this strain. We are in year 2, or moving into year 3. We've been in it now for 2 years. So I don't know what the end looks like. Yesterday we had, so we have monthly calls with all of the state veterinarians in the country, specifically just to talk about high path AI and high path AI challenges. And, you know, yesterday was one of those calls, and we had another moment of reflection that said, I think we all need to take another step back and look at, and Morgan, I'm going to get it wrong again. Are we seeing the trees or the forest? Or you guys know that saying anyways, right? I'm very terrible with sayings. You all will learn this about me, but they also, you know, said we really need to take a step back because we've all been dealing with this for years, and how sustainable is this? And I've talked with Kate for, you know, the last year and a half about this. How sustainable is this? We're going to continue to deal with this, and vaccination is another thing that we'll continue to talk with USDA about, and ask hard questions. Because if you look at USDA's manual and you look at their book on their policy for evaluation of utilizing vaccination in a foreign animal disease outbreak, we've met it. But there's a lot of pushback from certain industries on why they don't want to use it. So very long-winded answer on that. That really wasn't a very good answer. Thank you.
And
Ariana.
Maggie, just a real quick follow-up on that, just to your point about vaccinations. And George, when you were on the commission, I remember you asking a lot of really important questions about why are we required to do what we're required to do, and why can't we think outside the box? And so and Maggie and Morgan have been a big players in this, but really trying to push the edges of what we can do and what we can do differently. But so much of it is out of our hands. That said, we're not just tossing in the towel. We are continuing to push for how do we do this different and look at this response. So George, I just want to make sure your comments from years ago, we haven't lost sight of them.
Yep, for sure.
I see two hands. I think Roberto's was up first.
Yeah, thank you, Kylene. And thank you, Dr. Baldwin. Yeah, I was just gonna comment on like pressuring the USDA to really prioritize this, just seeing the economic fallout and the impact on our food system, that this is something that they need to act on urgently. So like vaccination, like what are the different levers, rather than just like, you know, submitting a proposal or a recommendation, what kinds of policy measures perhaps are needed to kind of push that along. Because yeah, I mean, I think it's not sustainable and we're gonna just sink more resources without actually solving the problem. So I just wanted to kind of see, you know, what additional strategies, levers, etc., could be kind of implemented perhaps across the board, or even, you know, even globally, I guess.
Yeah. Well, so good, really good question. I mean, good comment. So on the vaccination specifically, I have asked, you know, what is it? What is going to be impacted? I want, uh-oh, my screen went gone. Hang on. I had an update thing come up, but I'm still here. Okay. So what I need to know specifically, what is it? Why are we worried? What are the numbers? What's actually going to be impacted? And they said, well, we're going to lose $6.2 billion in export. And I said, how do you know that? Can you tell me the facts behind how do we know this? You know, what are the agreements? And I haven't gotten that answer, Roberto. I've asked for a meeting with our USDA import-export trade staff, and I haven't had that yet. I asked several times for that, and we have not been able to make that happen. So that's one thing. I will tell you, we have made effective policy changes throughout this response. One of which is backyard flocks are no longer required to be depopulated. Now, unfortunately, most of those backyard flocks, all the birds die from the virus. So, you know, that hasn't helped a lot of the flocks because most of the flocks are significantly impacted, but that is something that they did make a policy change on that. So we had one flock, he just a couple weeks ago, he lost all of his adult birds within a few days. They all died, but he had chicks that he had in a separate barn that he had, you know, had completely separated, and he wants to keep them alive and see if he can raise them. So we did allow for that. So we have had a couple of variances on that. The other thing is on the egg side. I've been working for the last 10 months on a working group with USDA on how can we save the savable protein on these infected facilities, because oftentimes they've got, you know, pallets and pallets full of eggs that are ready to go out the door, that have already been clean, washed, sanitized, and they were laid before clinical signs were on this facility. So how can we save some of those? So we have put together a policy document on that. So we're working on, you know, changing policy, and a lot of it is just like Kate said, pushing the envelope a little bit, you know, really asking hard questions. It's the why to me. Why is this the policy? Does it make sense? And is it sustainable? And if all of our countries globally are dealing with this, what's the harm in vaccination? That's my question. Why is this such a trade restricting problem when every other country is having the same problem? So we'll continue to push that.
Thanks.
Elena?
Yes, thank you. And thank you for that great update. I was actually curious, and I'm taking off my ag hat, but what are the repercussions on wild bird species? Do we know?
Yeah. We sure do. So this, again, is a very unique outbreak for the last 2 years. Historically, when we see highly pathogenic avian influenza come in those reservoir species, in wild birds, in our waterfowl and shorebirds, historically, they are carriers of disease and they are not typically impacted by the virus itself. However, this has been very different for the last 2 years. We have seen significant die-offs in our wild bird species, in the birds that typically carry this. So in geese, in not as much probably in ducks. We've seen a lot of die-offs in geese, but we've seen really massive die-offs in species, in wild bird species that we hadn't seen before. And what does that mean as far as a biologic system goes, wildlife system, ecosystem? They don't really know what are the long-term impacts going to be from this, but there's a lot of really smart people that are looking at that. I'm not on the wildlife side, but we do meet with our state wildlife veterinarian very routinely, and this is something that she's really interested in. And it is something, again, we see it now in birds of prey. We're also seeing it in other mammals, which is wild mammals. So in seals and dolphins, I think they detected it in Morgan. I can't remember where that was, if that was Florida or another country. We've also seen it in bears, fox, skunk here in Colorado. So we're seeing spillover into other wild mammals, and that is causing mortality in those species too. So, this is not just a bird problem anymore.
Dr. Baldwin, Dr. McCarty, thank you. Thank you for everything that you do, and thank you for the update.
You bet.
Have a great holiday.
Thanks so much, everyone. Take care.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
I think we'll switch over real quick and we will go with George and Joe's updates from Regional Assistant Commission updates. George, you want to go first?
I can. Thank you. It's these diseases are just so disturbing that we're finding, whether it's in wild populations or in livestock, and very worrisome. And I'm always trying to think of ways to breed for immunity, if there's a way to do that, or because I seem like that's the wild population will have to do that at some point. But anyway, I've been fairly busy lately. The last couple meetings I've been to that are about the National Conservation Area along the Rio Grande River, from basically Alamosa down to the state line. It encompasses a piece of land that has been in an outstanding natural area conservation thing since about 2015, and it's mostly BLM land, and right now there's a movement to put a national conservation area there to basically kind of help fund the BLM to improve management of that land down through there. And it has a lot of impacts on local ranchers and farmers in that area, and people who are running livestock especially. There's a lot of trespass livestock along the river and kind of all around in that area. So that's an element that part of this is being focused on to try to deal with. And also the kind of increasing tourist traffic that's in the area, and a lot of mountain biking and different recreational activities going on in the area at the same time. And so trying to get a handle on that has been the reason for this enactment of this outstanding natural area, and get some more funding. The two meetings I've been to have not been very well attended by local people, mostly agency people and recreational people. The the drive is being led by the San Luis Valley Ecosystem Council, and they send out invitations to people, and so there's kind of very strict rules about how you can participate and questions you can ask. And I don't think it leaves a very good taste in the mouth of the locals down there. And they're not showing up, in my view anyway. I just don't see very many people there. But it probably will happen anyway, and I think that's just kind of what the locals have resigned themselves to, that it's just going to happen anyway, so why bother? I don't know. Maybe Elena or somebody has a little more insight into that. The other thing has been water meetings, as always. I've got to go to one here as soon as this is over. An interesting one the other day was the Rio Grande Canal users meeting, where those are the people who own a lot of water on the west side of the valley out of the Rio Grande River and have historic water rights. And they're part of Subdistrict Number 1, and Subdistrict Number 1 is not doing very well as far as recovering its aquifer. And so that water, it gets more and more valuable all the time, and people have the ability to lease it. That was a little bit my question for Kevin Ryan, because here in the valley, you can lease your surface water rights to other users in the basin, and then if you don't use them, then you can get paid for that. And what that's done is driven a really high price for those lease fees, and it makes a person question whether or not they want to continue farming with their own water when they could lease it for less than they could, it would cost them to farm. And as the price of water goes up, it puts a lot of pressure on the community in ways that I don't know everybody was really ready for when some of these rules were made. So anyway, that's kind of been mostly what I've been doing. I plan to do a Soil Health in the West conference in St. George, Utah in February. I've been invited to speak there, and there'll be more stuff between now and then, but that's kind of it for me.
Thank you, George. Joe? Okay, I'm already there. Basically, as I reported up here in Northwest Colorado, we're working on the 2 Ws, wolves and water, with wolves about to be on the ground. So I know you've probably heard about the lawsuit that CCA, the Colorado Cattlemen's Association, and the Gunnison's Life announced yesterday. There's also one in the background for another group that has already, they're calling themselves CCA also. They're calling, they sent a letter last week to the Oregon Fish and Wildlife, informing them they would be part of the lawsuit if they provided wolves to the state of Colorado. It is what it is, and we'll see what happens with those. Otherwise, wolves are supposed to be on the ground within the next week or so. And other water is going on consistently and constantly, as Kate and I met at the drought task force, and I've been attending a lot of meetings virtually, and sometimes just so that maybe to give you a laugh, my son does a lot of water work over here as his. So in order to not embarrass him, I try to attend virtually those meetings that he's physically being at. It's kind of embarrassing to have your mother show up at a meeting, with you. But we've got a wolf meeting this next week. We're moving on to the next year. I've got a leafy spurge meeting online. There's a meeting in March to see how the release of wolves have happened. There's just a lot of things popping up here and there, but it's going to slow down for the next 2 weeks, and we're going to have Christmas instead. So that's all I have.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, George. Thanks for what you do. I think for time frame, we're going to do just voluntary commission report. If there's anything of value that you really want to share with us, we'll do that. Otherwise, we'll kind of watch our time. I don't have anything of value for the Front Range information, but I do have something I want to share, and this is more to benefit Simon. So Kent went to a USDA conference in Washington, D.C. last week, and as he's unpacking his bag, this is one thing that he unpacks. And I said, where did you get that? And he said, yeah, I went to a nutrition security breakout session. And I said, I've got to share that with Simon and let him know that you got that. Yeah, yeah. I said, that's broken arrow. That's Simon.
Yes.
So I wanted to share that with you.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So is there any commission, anybody on the commission that would like to share any information going on? Like I said, today is just kind of voluntary. You just want to say happy holidays. That's great too.
Colleen, I got a quick update. I've been asked to sit on the producer panel that's helping the Colorado State Land Board redesign their rate structure on grazing land in Colorado. They've got a process now that's basically it's kind of a formula that's a combination of producer surveys and competitive bids. But I just wanted to put that out there. I'm not on the panel as a representative of CDA, but as a producer. But if any of you have any input on that process or have any ideas, or assistant commissioners, if you're out in the field and have any producers that are being impacted by some of these rates or anything, they can certainly reach out to me. It's a series of, I think, 3 different meetings, and I don't know what we're going to come up with yet, but if any of you have any people in your communities that are would have some input on that, they can certainly reach out to me. And that's all I have. Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Nick. For safety, for purposes, would it be good if they contact Ariana and she lets you know, Nick?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay, great. Anyone else would like to share of anything? Anything for the good of the order? Simon?
Yeah, I will quickly just be, Kevin in his presentation earlier, just involved with the Ute Tribe Water Resource Committee, dealing with a lot of these issues that Kevin touched on, which it hits home in some of these areas that we're dealing with the Ute Tribe and their Water Resource Committee. And I do want to just put one plug in, the farm and ranch portion. We're still busy, believe it or not. It's never seems to slow down. But on the cattle end, I know earlier Chris was talking about cattle and updating on that. I just wanted to put a plug in for the cattle operation here at the farm. The cattle are all weaned, which is good. They're all on site. But I think it's around 575 bred that's on the farm right now, females, and 120 replacement heifer calves, and still 70 steers calves left to sell. But I leave them out a lot. I just wanted to throw a plug in on the cattle operation at the farm and the work they do also here on the farm project. So that's about it. And everybody have a Merry Christmas, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Simon. Any other volunteers?
This is Dave. I'll just give you a quick update out in Yuma County. The county commissioners did approve a solar project to come in to our county that's been out there with planning commission, et cetera, for a while. So the next step in that regard will be a contract with the company that's putting it in and Tri-State. So we'll see how that all works out. But that has just happened here in the last month here, I guess. So we will be having possibility of solar farm out that way. The other thing is right now is the fat cattle prices have gone off tremendously, for lack of a better word, in the last 3 weeks. And in general, a lot of the brokers and things didn't see that coming. So it was basically right after a USDA report had come out. So just a lot of concerns there, how fast that changed the current fed cattle markets. Otherwise, yes, Happy New Year. Merry Christmas to you all.
Thank you, David.
Colleen, I just wanted to just express gratitude to everyone in the commission and staff that joined us. It's been such a great year working with you all, learning about agriculture in our state and all the challenges and opportunities. And I feel like, you know, I've gained a lot of insight, but more than anything, I'm just grateful for the relationships that we've been able to cultivate and the connection that we have with you all. It really is an honor and such a gift for me to be part of this work with you all. So thank you, and I hope everybody has a good holiday season.
Thank you, Roberto. Well, I just a kudo to Kate and your staff. I think it's great what you are doing with the CARE Awards. We are so quick to do negative judgment and we forget that we need to do positive. And so these things that you did yesterday, especially yesterday, congratulations to you and Jordan and Hollis and all of your staff and your employees. Kudos for you guys doing that.
Thanks, Colleen.
If there's nothing for the Simon, you have your mic off?
No.
Okay, you're good.
Mic's off.
Okay. I'm just trying to watch screens here. If there's no other comments today, our next meeting is in January 17th at Broomfield. And I would just like to entertain a motion for closure of this meeting agenda, or this meeting.
Madam Chair, I so move we adjourn. This is
Thank
David.
you. Thank you, David. All those in favor of adjourning today's meeting? Oh, Kate has something?
Oh, I just need a second officially.
Oh, may I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Simon. All those in, any discussion? All those in favor, please state aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
All those opposed? Same sign. Motion pass. Thank you. Happy holidays to all of you, and we will see you in 2024.
All right.
Not
Thank
sooner.
you.
Bye-bye now.
See you, everybody.
Take care, everyone. Happy holidays.
Thank you.